Welcome
Hey
back to the
Airto, how you
show.
doing today?
Doing
Yeah, let's
well.
start off by a friendly greeting between the hosts. Hey, hey,
Hey, how's it going?
hey. Oh, yeah. Okay, now let's start.
Catchphrases and stuff. Yeah, that's we should
Yeah, yeah,
we get those catchphrases where we say a couple of words or some kind of phrase and then boom, that's what our merchandise will be.
yeah.
Be
It
off
should
and
be.
running.
Yeah, merchandise would be hey Airto.
hmm
That'd be a merchandise.
We ended on happy birthday. I think we did happy birthday Bob because there's somebody named Bob out there.
Oh,
Uh,
that's right. That was your idea. That was funny. That was funny. I said sorry. I have to pick up something.
no worries.
Uh, how'd that come out? There was something we said we were doing this for you, Bob. Oh, right. That's right. And then
Yeah.
you saying happy birthday because you figure there's a Bob out there somewhere whose birthday it is. And that was cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think we were saying like we gotta end on a good note, and I was like, well, we could end on happy birthday. It's probably somebody's
Yeah.
birthday. So that'll be the thing, happy birthday. People will have no idea what that came
Yeah.
from.
Happy
But
birthday with an ellipsis and a question mark.
oh, that's a good
Yeah.
question actually to start off. What do you think? How do you feel about ellipses? Like when I first started doing scripts, I was like crazy with ellipses, and then I
Yeah. I
gradually.
hate them. No, I think I remember talking to you about that too. I know you like to do ellipses because you like ellipses because there's always a sense that the thought's going on further or the moment or the action is going on further. And I
Right.
hate that because I just want that I'm only people when I go to a movie or watch a television show, I want the writer who's actually telling us what we're gonna see or do. I want
Yeah.
the writer to tell me a story and I don't want to do any work myself
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm a viewer.
Yeah.
When I'm a writer, I do all the work. But when
hmm
you're a viewer, or when I'm a viewer, I don't want any work on my part. So I hate when they leave open endings. Like it
hmm
ends on something that could go many ways, and that's oh man, isn't that cool? It could go a number of ways. No, it's not cool. Pick
Yeah.
one and pick one and do that one. I'm
Yeah.
here just to be entertained, not to have to think.
Yeah, and I think originally, like the reason I was doing it is because it seemed I did it a lot in dialogue, and it seemed like the natural way people kind of trail off and
Yeah,
don't
I know.
necessarily complete their sentences. But when you go to read, once the more I was reading, and probably after once I became a reader, um, then you really start to see it very condensed, very concise,
Yeah,
and it really helps actually the pace of the story. And for that reason, I
yeah,
think I'm
yeah.
like a big fan of commas too, because commas speed up the writing, whereas ands kind of like they elongate the pacing, but also don't emphasize what's the most important of the different and topics. So
Yeah, some people like we're talking about now that we're talking about editing areas, but this is interesting. I think that like some people don't put the comma before the final and before the
mhm,
and so and so in a series.
right, yeah,
They
yeah,
don't put a comma, and to me that links the last, the
hmm
previous one and the last one too closely.
hmm
Everything else was separated by a comma, and so if you don't put a comma, the and seems to make those two elements seem more importantly connected than
hmm
all the other elements. So I always put a comma before the and. I know people who are. I know somebody who's an editor and somebody who works for a living making uh, uh, rewriting like institutional films and documents, and she hates when somebody puts in a comma. She doesn't want that extra comma before the and. But
hmm. That's
it was like
interesting.
Democrats and Republicans. We couldn't get along. You put us in a room about commas and we'd beat the shit out of each other.
When I was a
It's like,
copywriter for this company that I used to work at in LA, um, the the guy who ran the company, he was really the son of the owner, but he would always like give me copy, and then he did that. He would have like three different topics in a sentence, and he would have comma, comma, no comma before the and I would always like correct it and send it back to him, and he would always recorrect it and then send it back to me. So we just did this back and forth, and a lot of
yeah.
times it was like nitpicky stuff like that. And he would write further in the beginning of a sentence instead of furthermore. And it's only
Oh,
applicable sometimes, you can't write further
yeah,
to start a sentence
yeah.
for everything. You know what I mean? Because it's not It's not just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
further, it's like, furthermore, like, you're continuing a thought.
yeah, yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Those
so
are isn't it funny? Everybody has their areas. Like you could have a real good scene of conflict between two editors. Just
yeah,
editing,
yeah,
just
totally.
editing text. And just going, well, this comma is you're really pissing me off with these commas you keep putting back in. I take them out for a reason, and I put them back for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck you. No, fuck you. Then the guy pulls out a knife and stabs the guy in the hand. And
Yeah, and it becomes a blood match and stuff. But it actually makes a difference in terms of the flow of the read, and that's
it
where,
does.
like, I started doing this thing too sometimes where I would put periods in between each word because it's more of a
Yes.
staccato point, of
Right. That
emphasizing the
works
words. Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah,
But then I
I've
would
seen
get
that.
notes from a producer one time that was like, "Why are you putting all these periods the in between each word?" And I was like, "It's because you're emphasizing each word." You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
because they're like, the hard and fast rule is you can't give direction to the actors or the directors. You're creating this world where you're supposed to leave it up to interpretation so that they can
right, right.
change
To some
everything
degree,
for you.
I don't buy that because being a control writer who likes
Hmm.
my stuff to be the way I see it,
Right.
I put in direction, but I don't put in too much. If you put in too much direction, then they catch on and they say, "Hey, leave us alone. We don't want your direction." So I don't put in much, but I put in those key ones that I know if they don't do it my way, I'm not going to like it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an adjustment in between.
Yeah. I mean,
But
it's a
I do that, and I do what you say. Sometimes I'll put a period because I don't want an ellipsis there because ellipsis makes a pause. What you
right.
want is you want each word to be said distinctively and separately,
Right.
like a period, and not like a pause in between each word.
Right. Yeah. It makes a big difference though. It makes a difference on the way you read the work, and then it makes a
Mm,
difference on um, and the way an actor would interpret how to speak the part, and
yeah, true, true, absolutely true. Yeah, all those things are important. People don't understand how important the writer is to the whole project. Without the writer, there's nothing. I mean, everybody says that, you
yeah,
have to start with, but in the way you write, it affects how they interpret it.
right.
If you're really heavy handed, you put in an interior or parenthetical direction on every speech or every line, uh, then they piss it all off and say,
Yeah,
screw it. This
yeah,
guy's trying to micromanage us, and
right.
they don't do any of it. So psychologically, that's why I only do really key ones.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, they're more apt to see. I respect their ability and their right to interpret, but not on this particular line.
It's interesting too because that can kind of like especially the parenthetical, where you're giving a hint to how this reading should be, and that, like you said, you're micromanaging the actor. Did you get a lot of what was your feedback from actors working with so many different types of actors, especially like you're working with some heavy hitters, some of the best actors in the business. So did they give you
Yeah.
like, any context or say anything, make corrections, any notes or?
A Taxi and Cheers. Jim Brooks established the tone for the respect or the responsibilities of each person. And
Right.
the actors had their area, and the writers had their area, the directors had their areas. And Glenn Les, who learned a lot from Jim Brooks when they were doing MTM shows, and I learned almost everything I learned in early TV from Jim Brooks. Um, know that. Don't give the actors too much, but when you give them what you want, they have to do that.
Yeah.
And we had big, Danny DeVito and Judd Hirsch, people who were, well, Danny wasn't established actually on Taxi. He was a newbie.
Hmm.
He had only done some movie parts that nobody remembered, except fans of his.
Hmm.
Um,
But Judd Hirsch was pretty well known at that time. I mean, he's
he
well
did,
known
he
now
did,
for
yeah, he was,
sure.
oh, he was well known then. He got his name
Yeah.
ahead of the show, which is really unheard of.
Right.
It's a Judd Hirsch in Taxi. I've
Hmm.
never seen that anywhere else. It's always Taxi starring Judd Hirsch
Hmm.
or Taxi. Yeah, I've never seen it where it was Judd Hirsch in. Like he
Hmm.
was more important than the show.
Hmm. or the main or the
So he
draw that wants you to make watch that show. Yeah, that's
for
interesting.
Judd Hirsch, yeah, but so he never had a problem with. No one ever complained to us about directions, but Jim Brooks was good about that in the same way. I don't remember who originally told me give them directions, don't give them too much. Somebody must
Hmm.
have told me that because I didn't know anything when I started.
Hmm.
Somebody must have said too many directions will piss them off, the director and the actors. So just do the ones that are important. But that's what Jim Brooks always put direction in when they were important, and so do I. But I don't
Hmm.
overdo it. I don't
Yeah,
overdo it.
that's what you want though as a writer is you want to have everyone on their toes, right? Ready to be like, chucking spears at you. That seems to be the
Yeah.
thing that you want is you want to piss people off so they know who's boss and that you can write them off the show, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. No,
Did
you're in charge as a writer. It's a
Mhm.
cool feeling. They don't start. You're when you walk on the set, and then the AD says, "Oh, Ken's here. Let's everybody in their place."
Yeah.
And you go, nothing can go until the head writer's there, until the showrunner's there. They can't do shit.
Did you ever get like people because actors do have, especially once they really establish a role and they understand a character, the ins and outs. Did you have, because we talked before about how you know Shelley Long and Ted Danson were wanting to have the baby and be Sam's baby. It couldn't be Fraser's baby, and then the whole thing it became like to where you just hid the fact that she was even pregnant. Like they couldn't ever come to it.
Right.
Did you ever get actors where they have a take that's different than what you had interpreted or what you had meant, and then you take a second to listen to their different take
Yes.
and you're like, oh, okay, that's actually, yeah, that does bring a different nuance to that particular scene or what have you.
Absolutely. Maybe that's one of the reasons they did faithfully do our notes and our
Hmm.
script, because if they said, I think I have a way that feels better for me. Can
Hmm.
I do this? We always would say, "Well, show us," and they would show us, and if it was better, we would do it.
Hmm.
I always wanted to make the best show possible. I never was one of the egos that said, "I'm going to do it my way, even if it's not as good."
Hmm.
Your name's on the episode, and you want that episode to be the best episode it can be, or at least that's how I've always felt. So,
Right.
if an actor has a suggestion, yes. If he gets to the point where they're starting to do it on their own without asking first, then
Hmm.
you throw a spear. Then the guy's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Right out of the series.
Yeah, drag him
Uh,
out kicking and screaming.
yeah, the writer's in control. I mean, that's why I'm a TV writer. I want to be in control. And
Hmm.
I started out wanting to run a show. I started out in the beginning saying I'm a writer now, but I'm gonna be the writer showrunner eventually, and I
Hmm.
did because you want it to be yours. You want to be in control.
But
But
you said
I
something.
don't want.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I don't want to do it without the help of the experts.
Right,
Obviously, I don't know
right.
directing as well as the director, or cinematography as well as the cinematographer. The acting as well as the actors. Well, in that case, I do know as well as them, because no,
Yeah. But
I
that's
was
what I
the
was gonna
actor.
bring up though. Yeah.
Anybody can act. Like
Yeah.
shit. My little girl, my child could act. When she was a little girl, she'd come in and say she didn't do it, and I believe her.
Yeah,
I didn't do
yeah.
that. I didn't knock that thing over. I go, oh,
Right.
okay, I believe you. That's
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of acting too, just being a person. I mean, but actually, that was interesting that you said that ego is a very important element of, the creative process. When you're working with other people, you have to be able to check your ego and put it aside so that you get the best
Yeah,
product. And that's something that, definitely new people may not really, not all new people, but newer, oh, I have a plane flying over. That's fantastic. Newer
I don't
people,
hear it.
oh, good, good.
I don't hear it on my end. Yeah.
Okay. But newer people may not, I think like if you've been doing it for a little bit or you have good examples of how to receive information and feedback from people, then it does give you the ability to kind of ease up and because it's the final product that you're having a say over. But
Yeah.
if somebody
Yeah.
has a great suggestion or a new take and it like really helps the whole piece, then it's like why not take it? Take advantage of that.
Absolutely. But as a writer, showrunner, where you're in charge, you don't want to give them so much freedom that then they just start everything you do or give them that they want to reinterpret, and
Mm-hmm.
that gets to be out of hand. You got to let them know that you're in control, and but you're open to suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all. You don't want them rewriting your script for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And also, like
You know,
we talked.
I
I was gonna say we talked about this with Sam's baby and everything. You have people who have embodied the characters, so they have a feeling of how it goes. But the writer's job is to track all the characters over the course of the series, over the course of the season, so you have a clear idea. Even if you're just going week by week by week, you don't, what I mean, you're making it up as you go along. You still have to track those emotional beats, those perspectives that
you
they
know
have, so that way it doesn't get, like you said, where there's too many chefs in the kitchen, because there is a reason why there's people doing different departments. I mean, everybody has their own expertise.
yeah, what I couldn't understand when we talked about um, Sam and Diane, the characters, and how Shelley and Ted became so in, they put themselves so far into those characters they were unable to be emotionally distant to make a
Hmm.
good judgment for the series,
Hmm.
where they did not want it to be Sam's Fraser's baby.
Right.
Um, they weren't thinking about the long run of the series, and that's the difference between a writer and an actor. The actor's thinking about that moment, that script, that episode, but the writer is thinking about the whole series and the whole integrity.
Hmm.
Had Sam had a baby, it would change him enormously, and they couldn't see that. He
Hmm.
could no longer be the flirt he was. He could no longer be a womanizer because he has a baby with a woman. It changes the dynamic. They couldn't see that. All they could see is in the moment they were emotional, as though they were Sam and Diane, not Ted and Shelley.
Hmm.
They said he's not going to have my he's not going to have my baby, about Fraser, and Sam saying, yeah, definitely, Fraser's not going to have her baby. And you're going, I want to say, guys, step out of this for a minute. Look at the bigger picture, because you were not Sam and Diane. And even
Hmm.
if you were Sam and Diane, you look at the bigger picture. You'd say, gosh, if Sam were flirting and kind of cheating, and she has a baby at home, how would you feel about that,
Hmm.
Shelley? How would you feel about having his baby at home and he's out dating some woman?
Hmm.
You'd feel like crap. You'd hate him. It changes the whole series.
And when Fraser did actually end up, he got with Lilith, and then they ended up having a child, it didn't seem
Mm.
like there was any kind of conflict. It seemed very organic because their personality types were, compatible with that storyline. It wasn't something.
And they were going to be together. They were going to be together. It wasn't
Hmm.
like
Hmm. Right, right.
Sam and Diane were not going to be together. That was the premise of the series, was that these two people who are so unlike one another are in love with each other on a physical, sexual level, but emotionally are totally unfit for each other. They're totally a mismatch.
Hmm.
And that was the series. And once she has Ted's baby, now I'm mixing them up. Once she has Sam's baby,
Right.
Diane has Sam's baby, we would all hate Sam for still dating and still womanizing in front of her. It's just like, who flaunts that in front of the woman who's your baby's mother? It's just, you don't do that anymore.
Right.
So it'd be a different series, and even their flirting would be different. Flirting with the woman who already gave birth to your baby is different than flirting with some woman you want to have sex with that you haven't had sex with. I don't know why they didn't see that, but they didn't. They didn't
Yeah.
see that. They're both smart people, and they're both really wonderful actors. They both are, but
Yeah.
they got so emotionally inside of those characters, and then even then couldn't see beyond how those characters would react later on. They couldn't see that changed the whole series.
I mean, now you have like a baby mama scenario. That's a very
Yeah,
common phrase, so people kind of
the
accept that.
yeah,
Again.
your baby mama, the woman you didn't marry who had your child, is like a big story. That is a different series. That's a
Right.
totally different series. You
Right.
know, a guy who's a flirt and a woman who's very sexual but doesn't acknowledge it. Is what Diane was. She thought she was an intellectual, not an
Mm-hmm.
animal, and
Right.
yet she got animal like about Sam because he was
Yeah.
such a good looking guy, and for some reason she was really turned on to him. But they didn't connect at all intellectually, so there was no potential for a long term relationship
Mm-hmm.
beyond friends. It seems, though there have been marriages based on a stupid and a smart character coming together, but it's a different. It's a different story. It's
Mm-hmm.
all, they wanted to change the series because she didn't want to have Fraser's baby. So we hid her pregnancy. Shelley was pregnant, and we had to then hide her pregnancy for the whole year. The remaining 7 months or whatever she had left, 8 months, uh, because they wouldn't deal with her pregnancy in the series.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very weird thing hiding her pregnancy. We did it in creative ways, but some of it was almost silly. We had her stuck in the heating vent one episode. I don't remember why she went into the heating vent.
Right.
How did we get her into the heating vent? I'm sure I can sit down and figure out a way, but offhand I can't think of how did she get stuck in the heating vent.
I think
Never
she
even
was
talked
trapped
to
in
her
the
through the
office. Was she trapped in the office and was trying to get out or something? Like the office was locked?
talking to the vent through the
Yeah.
office.
Yeah. One question I had
Uh,
though, like because you have a lot of traditional sitcoms, for example, are family oriented, but this particular, you've worked on a couple of shows that are ensemble casts, and so
yeah,
it's a family within the people that are involved. But so I don't. Do you think about it the same
it's
way?
easier. No, it's easy. It was easier to hide her. She ended up for the most of that season being just one of the characters, and Sam became the star of the show. And she was glad to do that because she didn't want to have Fraser baby. So
Mm-hmm.
she gave up being the star of the show basically because we just couldn't feature her as much as we did when she was able to stand outside of not be inside of them.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes she'd just wear a big parka. Sometimes she would hold her delivery tray up high enough to cover her midriff. There are ways to hide it, but it was crappy. It would have been so good if they would have been cooperative and we could have made it Fraser's baby. It would have created great tension between Sam and her. Except once she had Fraser's baby, Sam couldn't be as flirty with her even because she's a baby mama, with
Mm-hmm.
somebody else's child. So it would change things too. But whatever. Rhea got pregnant twice during this run of the
Yeah.
series, and both times we showed it
Yeah.
because she had no problems with that.
You can start to see it coming on though, because there are like more. I think they were pregnant at the same time at one point, right?
Yeah. Uh huh.
And so you see like them holding a lot of trays, standing just offside the
Yeah.
bar. You know what I mean? Like there was always these ways to
Yeah.
obscure things. How do you deal with an ensemble cast where you have to give almost a certain amount of screen time to all these different characters, and plus Cheers had like interactive characters that would come and go,
Yeah.
and then you're tracking these different storylines. How is that how do you do that basically?
It's a little difficult. You
Yeah.
you you don't want to just throw somebody a line and it just looks like you just threw somebody a line to keep them alive. So you had
Yeah.
to have. Sometimes we would resolve that with subplots. We'd have characters who weren't involved much in the main story would have a subplot. That was usually the way we did it.
Hmm.
So Sam and Diane had a very strong story where they were getting together, and it took up most of the screen time. We'd have to have a really strong subplot that involved Norm and Cliff and Carla.
Hmm.
You always had to keep them alive. You couldn't say, "Well, this week I'm not even going to do them. We're going to, we don't need them. We'll have a line here and there." And you can't do that. For one, you have the actors' egos,
Hmm.
and and secondly, you have fan base who some like different characters, and you don't want to cut their character out for an episode. So you had it involved a little extra work, but it's not as hard as you would think because you can subplots always could serve that purpose of giving lines to somebody who's not actively involved in the story. But you
But
had to
then,
keep them alive. We always called it that. We always called it keeping keeping your cast alive,
hmm so
keeping them
then
all alive.
and you can give them like those you know like you said, you don't want to just give them a line so that way they are involved in the shoot, and as an actor I don't know if you'd want to just show up all the time to have one or two lines, and you don't really get to like,
Yeah.
and you don't really get to envelop the character. But that does help sometimes when you have like Carla walks by and she has a snide comment, or Coach says
Oh
something
yeah,
off
yeah.
the wall.
She did that all the time in the series. If she had enough snide comments just passing by to give her enough lines, she might not even be in the subplot. It might be the subplot is just Norm and Cliff, and she's just taking a lot of shots at Sam and Diane in their main story, and shots
Hmm.
at Cliff and Norm in their story. Yes,
Yeah.
it's just a balance. You just keep it in your head. You look at it, you look at the script and say, "Oh, Carla's not in here much. We better give her something to do. She's not in the subplot or the plot." Then you're in trouble unless you come up with a lot of clever passing lines, which you can do. That's another way to do it. So,
It's got to be
clever ways
unique
to
though,
do it.
to have like a real Perlman where she knows how to have that tone, that pitch, to be mean, but where it's funny, it doesn't seem mean, because a lot of people
Yeah.
sometimes they do mean and it doesn't come off right, like.
Yeah. Her mean was never scary, even though she was kind of vile. It was
Hmm.
never scary. I've seen people when their means are scary, even when they're not raising their voice. They're just scary. And she and her hubby, Danny DeVito, played basically the same character of different genders.
Hmm.
On Taxi, Louis was like that. In spite of his meanness, you never really felt endangered by him. You never really felt you loved the guy, and I used to think it was because he was so small that
Hmm.
you
Yeah, I
kind of
was gonna
felt
ask.
some sympathy for him. And
Yeah.
she was equally small.
Right.
They're both under 5 feet or just at 5 feet. They're both very short for
For actors.
for actors. Yeah, I was gonna say because much shorter they would be little people, and those are different parts.
Yeah.
They're actors too. They're little people who are very good actors, but they're those are different parts usually, and usually parts involve somehow some mention or some indirect reference to their size. And we never really talked much about the size of those characters. We let it just play out for itself. And they were about 5 foot, which is just about, the range where much shorter, there would be different parts. I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I
we
think.
never say anything about Danny's size. Never. Danny did. I mean, the actor did it in a speech he made in an episode that's based on a true event that happened to Danny DeVito.
Hmm.
And when we were looking for the one where he sees Elaine in the bathroom, it's a terrible thing that he did. He made a hole in the door so you could see into the stall.
Hmm.
It was so awful that we had to have something to balance it. Uh, so we asked Danny. He said, "Danny, we don't want to do anything about." We said this. We don't want to do anything about your size,
Hmm.
uh, but we need something that makes us have sympathy for you based on we need a lot of sympathy for you to get you past this thing that happened. And Danny's the one who said, "Well, it used to be very hard for me to buy clothes because I had to go to the chubby boys section."
Hmm.
And he said, "So they like them. Kids are mean sometimes. We always say of kids being sweet and innocent. On the other hand, they can be meaner than adults, in
Hmm.
some ways. And the kids will torment other kids who have defects. It's terrible what they do. So
Because they lack
they
social
can,
grace, they lack that kind of, uh, that basically social grace. They don't have they haven't been taught yet to, you know, that cancel culture is a real thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so Danny told a story about he'd go into that section, and all the kids would make fun of him because he was an adult. He was not a child. And he's buying in a boy section, uh, and in the chubby part because he was kind of on the heavy side for his size too. And he said that was so demeaning, so awful, and humiliating, and violating your space or your privacy,
Hmm.
which is exactly what he had done to Elaine. So
Hmm.
that it worked great. We said, "Oh, great! That's a great story, Danny. Can we use it?" And he said, "Absolutely."
But you knew going in that, like, oh, this is a touchy moment here, so we have to try to offset that with some type of, like you said, sympathy for the character. So there's, and it
Yeah.
almost, I don't know, like how it would play today, like that kind of thing. There's still,
An important point about that is we had written something to offset what he had done, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't strong enough when we saw it playing on its feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Danny came in with his suggestion. It wasn't like this is before it was written and we said to Danny, how are we going to write this thing? It had been written, and there was something there that made Danny look vulnerable when he was talking to Elaine and she wouldn't forgive him. And then he had to say, when she said, you don't know what you put me through. And he had to say, yes, I do. And everybody said, you don't. And then he had this great thing and said, "Oh yeah, he does know."
Mm-hmm.
We had one in there, but it just wasn't very strong compared to this thing that Danny. We saw it. We said, it's just not strong enough. It's just not good enough. We need something more embarrassing, but we didn't want to deal with Danny's size or his physical
Mm-hmm.
um, areas that he might have been picked on as a kid or as an adult or whatever. So we didn't want to go there, and we're doing it on personality, and personality is not working.
Mm-hmm.
So Danny told us and gave us permission to do something about something he had no control over, his size.
Was that like to avoid like a cheap jab or something, too being too on the nose, too obvious, that you didn't want to like
I think
go.
we didn't want to do it out of sense of humanity. You were
Mm-hmm.
talking about social grace a moment ago because we had enough social grace to not just throw a page or a few pages down on the set to make fun of his size when Danny might still be very sensitive about that. So we
Mm.
didn't want to do that. So we called him in our office and we said, look, we got this problem. We didn't say his size or anything. We got this problem. The scene is is not making you vulnerable enough when we need you to be almost or as vulnerable as Elaine so that she can understand that you understand and then you can have this moment of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came up with this thing because he
Mm-hmm.
is clearly in his mind. One of the most humiliating times in his life is when he has to go out and buy clothes. Well, now he has a buyer. He doesn't have to go out and buy clothes anymore. Man, he's
Mm-hmm.
famous, so nobody would care. But
Mm-hmm.
when he was a young man, he wasn't that young. He didn't get his first break until Taxi. He was already in his 40s.
Mm.
He had done some very small movie parts. He just hadn't made it as an actor until Taxi made him a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to do things on his own with his own talent and merit that
Mm-hmm.
were on that level of superstardom. But he could have very easily gone his whole life without ever being a professional actor or
Yeah.
a money making professional actor because he did do stage stuff,
I
but
wonder like
still nothing big.
I wonder if
Go ahead.
psychologically there's like something to that stature, him having a small stature, he can be mean. It's like a chihuahua. You'll tolerate something from a chihuahua that you wouldn't
Absolutely.
tolerate from maybe a Great Dane or a Rottweiler, one of the bigger animals, a horse. If you had a
See, that
horse that was like,
I agree with you. I think that's it. I
onerous like
think
that.
what happened I think size was very important in that character and in his ability to do nasty, mean stuff. Danny didn't pull back as much on his nasty meanness as Carla did. Carla did nasty, mean, and somehow seemed vulnerable. Danny's vulnerability didn't come from his language because Danny really nailed things hard.
Hmm.
That was part of the fun of that character is he was really mean. I mean, hard mean, but he was small. And I think that's part of who you are. As an actor, you use the whole tool,
Hmm.
every part of it. And part of it is this size or your size or your look. You could be handsome and you got certain parts you play as handsome. You can't play great comedy parts usually. But there
Hmm.
are some handsome people who do comedy, but not as many. Uh, or you could be homely, in which case you don't play any leading man part.
Hmm.
Nothing you can do about that except make the most of it.
Yeah, so like when he was, cast against Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins, that's another example where he kind of, and like I said, it's not that he's typecast. His characters are very different. He just knows how to use that portion in his toolbox to,
Yes.
emphasize the character and what the character is going through. But Arnold Schwarzenegger was like a much more affable person. He was kind of in that movie in particular. Um, he was much more affable, much more easy to get along with, kind of charismatic and likable. Whereas, but you empathize more with Danny DeVito's character.
Absolutely, because of his size.
Hmm.
And size is one of your tools. I mean, you use it. We
Hmm.
all have gifts. Some of our gifts seem like they're not gifts. They seem like curses. Perhaps Danny
Hmm.
all his life, when he was younger, probably hated that he was so short. But being short allowed him to play something that was unique and made him a superstar.
Hmm.
So in a way, he owes part of his success to his total toolbox. You use the word toolbox. That's a good one. The
Hmm.
toolbox. I was saying a tool like it's one thing, but you're right. It's a toolbox of all these things. And one of the things in this toolbox is size.
Hmm.
You pull that out and they give you a sympathy card, man. It's not cheap. It's being smart. It's figuring out if you're really pretty, use that smile, that perfect smile you have. Uh, Shelley had a great smile. Shelley Long had a great smile. She was a little too thin, small chested, small waisted, and a lot of things you might find attractive. But I thought she had a killer smile, and she also had a killer personality on her own, and that played through with Diane when Diane wasn't being too elitist about her intellect.
Hmm.
It was there. Shelley was very attractive, but she knew what parts worked. She knew what parts made her attractive, and a lot of it was knowing that smile or that little grin or that smirk. She just had great tools in those expressions. She had great expression.
But that's also playing against opposites, right? Because she's attractive and she's, like not totally a blonde, but she's not like, you could easily dismiss her as maybe like a school marm or a librarian or something like that. So it fits with her character, but she is playing opposite. And she's also striving to be intellectual, beyond her own,
Yeah, beyond what
capabilities.
her, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that was part of the fun of it. Was she wasn't as smart as she thought she was.
Right.
She was smart. I mean, no doubt about it. The character was written to be smart, but she thought she was smarter, and that's why she liked to show off her education, or she was erudite, because
Hmm.
she that was not her charm. That was one of her deficits. That was one of the things that made her. But we could laugh at her for that, and we could
Hmm.
laugh at her for that because she's pretty. And that's nothing. We've
Right.
talked about that before. If you're gonna laugh at somebody for their defect, then there better be something that saves them. So you're not just laughing at somebody who's down on the ground. You don't want to kick somebody who's down.
Hmm.
And so with Reverend Jim, he was the happiest guy in the garage. He's the only guy in the garage who's going to be truly happy.
Hmm.
Um, Rieger, Alex Rieger used to claim that he was the only one. He was the only one to say he was truly a taxi driver until Reverend Jim came. Then he was also truly a taxi driver, but he was joyful about it, and Alex was just accepting of it. And
Yeah.
that was so we could laugh at Chris Christopher Lloyd's um, portrayal because he didn't see anything in our laughter or our inability to understand what he's saying as hurtful. He just dealt with it, and it
Hmm.
was all fun for him. And he was the most together guy in the place in a
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
So
And
that's what we
also,
had to do.
Judd Hirsch's character too is also like the moral compass for the show, basically. Like he had that. I remember there was an episode where there was a guy that was abusing his Great Dane when he was back in the
Oh
in the
yeah,
back of the car, and he really, he ended up taking the Great Dane, and then everybody stood up for him at the very end. So the
yeah,
owner
yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
come back and take the Great Dane, and that that kind of there is we talked about this a little bit last time about the moral play going on with shows and whether or not it's emphasized. And you said like with Coach's Daughter that was a particular slant that you were going for, but Jim Brooks had also told you like there's only so many episodes in a season that you're going to do that with. It's not always something that you're going to go for every single show.
Right.
So that's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
otherwise you're doing a show about. They used to do that. The early shows, Leave It to Beaver and
Right.
old shows used to have a moral for every story. Every story was a
Right.
lesson.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Jim would always say, yeah, Jim hated lessons. No lessons, no kindness from Louis. All these things he would rule out. The guy, the prostitute with the golden heart. All that stuff is those are cliche characters.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
he wanted Louis to be pure bad because you rarely see that. And when it is done, it's not usually done well. And Louis can be purely bad and still, you just kind of felt, oh, he's had a hard life. People have been
Mhm.
abusive to him all his life. Give him a break. Give him some
Mhm.
slack. It was perfect, perfect casting.
But if
And
he was
Danny
like
played,
somebody that was big or something like that, that was seemed threatening, you might not have that same leeway for that character. Like if Norm was
well,
a
you know what?
jerk, something like
Yeah,
that, then it would be
absolutely.
different.
Danny's part was supposed to be played by an overweight, normal sized guy with an Irish accent.
Hmm.
That was how it was written originally. He's kind of this old, lovable curmudgeon, but he'd do these mean things. Yeah, somebody say, "Hey, the tires are." I just noticed the tread on the tires are low on number so and so. Is we do take out cars with low, with bad tread, and
Hmm.
he would still do that kind of stuff. And Louis would do like really snarky. This guy would do it with this kind of sweet Irish accent and be kind of an older, big guy, and would say, "You're taking out cars with bad tread. That's what we do."
Hmm.
And somehow that his lovability made it okay. So that's how they wrote it. They made a guy who was just looked physically and sounded lovable and still did these terrible things.
Hmm.
That was to offset that.
Hmm.
Then Danny came in and they said, "Shit, we don't have, he doesn't have to sweet talk anybody. He's just going to be mean all the time, but he's small, so we don't want to pick on him. We don't want to fight back.
Hmm.
You want to get somebody smaller
He
than
kind of seems like a
you."
quintessential New Yorker, though. Also, that's the way you kind of read him. Like because he is so, at least like at that time, and especially for the '70s, because the '70s and the '80s were really volatile for Taxi. I mean, not Taxi, but for New York. You had this
Uh,
very rugged kind of New Yorker attitude, not like you didn't in the '90s and the 2000s, but that was more of like a hip hop rugged, whereas everybody seemed rugged in the '70s and '80s. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
the
it seems that's why New York, New York. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. Or if I
Yeah.
can make it there, I can make it anywhere. That has to rhyme. Um, yeah, because New York was a hard city.
Hmm.
I, I I think like all major metropolis cities are hard now. I mean, LA is a hard city. LA is a hard city. It used to be think of as a layback city. I don't know. People are awfully tough on people here, and people shoot each other on the freeways and stuff. I
Yeah,
don't know if
LA
there's
is
is
very
there a
interesting.
city? Is there a city where you just go and it's kind of lay back?
I was gonna say Chicago, but that's probably because I've idealized Chicago, and it's one of the only big cities that I've been to where I haven't really lived in. I just visited.
Uh,
But San Francisco's definitely got like a real cool guy culture.
yeah,
Everybody's
that's
like,
true. San Francisco
yeah.
is kind of peaceful. Yeah, San Francisco is a good example. You don't think of hostility in San Francisco.
Oh, I was actually
Well,
saying like, yeah, I think it is kind of hostile, San
oh,
Francisco.
you do? I think San Francisco is not being hostile. See, there we go. It's all subjective. I think of San Francisco compared to LA that they have such liberal attitudes.
Yeah.
Their policies and stuff are so liberal. They're so human oriented. It's humanity. It's
Yeah. There's a lot of
but they do
homelessness, and like
awful
you
things.
get
There's a lot of homelessness. I was there when a homeless guy went into a pizza place and stabbed somebody to death because they didn't give him a free pizza. So it's not all sweet and lovely.
San Francisco,
Um,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, crazy stuff happens. I've seen some craziness go down. I've
yeah.
seen craziness go down in New York. I mean, I think like because I'm in my car all the time, maybe I didn't notice it so much in LA, but like for sure, San Francisco and New York have a real ruggedness to them.
Yeah,
You know.
but San Francisco, I thought it was being because of their liberal attitudes. I always thought of them being open and forgiving. But people are people. You put a lot of people together in a small space, and they
Yeah,
start picking on each other. They start doing things to each other. It's just,
yeah. But it is
I
like
guess
that
maybe a nice.
sardines thing, like you get all these people crammed together, and it's like you're gonna get like one of the things that I noticed like when I went to New York is in my mind when before I went to New York, I had always thought that I was trained to believe that white people didn't like Jews, blacks, and Asians. You know what I mean? And then when I went to New York, I realized, there's so many diverse cultures there that the white people didn't like Russians, people from the Eastern Bloc, like Ukrainians, like they had like they didn't like the Irish, they didn't like the Scottish, and it was like they didn't like anyone. I didn't realize that there were so many differentiations. I just thought like, oh, they're all in
Yeah,
the same category as far as I know, but like they broke
yeah.
it down to territories. That was
Yeah,
real eye
there's
opening.
so many people who hate people for just being different, and
Yeah,
and I know people. I mean, we've talked a little bit about using race in shows that there's certain things you can't do but like a lot of you think about a lot of white prejudice is really scary, but then there are people. I'm a white guy, and I'm probably one of the least prejudiced people I know. I mean, I'm open to
Yeah, I
anybody's
mean, I'm black and
diversity.
white, so somebody was
Yeah,
not that prejudiced going on
yeah, yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
So,
So it
so
exists,
yeah,
yeah.
so
I
yeah,
feel like white
so
people
it's like,
actually get a bad rep too, like not everybody
well,
is, just because you're white doesn't mean you have all the advantages, like you may be able to take advantage of certain advantages, but in the long run, there's just as many poor, uneducated, not having, they can't take advantages, no upward mobility, basically, is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
with no upper mobility. Usually that comes from people who are from um, um, backgrounds that where they didn't have the educational opportunities or where they didn't have social advancement opportunities, like the chances at better jobs and stuff.
Hmm.
Once they're down, they're down. It's really hard to escape that, whether
Hmm.
you're white or black or anything. When you're in that arena, it's a hard escape. Or just from what I know. Now I haven't
Hmm.
been there myself, so I don't know. It's from people I know that I've spoken to and things I've read. It seems like it's really a hard escape.
Yeah. Like when you're in San Francisco, I mean, you can probably speak to this, and definitely LA too. There's homeless white people, like I know it's not the thing to say right now because we have such a fervor for like, the complete opposite with the BLM movement and everything, and now the Asian thing, but it doesn't strike with reality. Reality is like you go to San Francisco, you see homelessness of all types, and
Yeah,
it's not, there's not as much discretion there as you would think, being told to us all the time.
yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot
I
of
don't
like
know what that is. I think that it's also just numbers. I mean, like there are more white people than there are other groups because there just were the history of the country that. So there's more. So when you see more, you see an equal number of homeless people who are white. It's still a much smaller percentage of their population, so they're
Mhm.
really not being as oppressed as much. They're being as oppressed as much as say the average black person. There'd be many more white homeless people than we see, but
Mhm.
there are homeless people of all diversities, all race and backgrounds, whatever. But it's awful no matter what, and in San Francisco it's worse than ever. And I don't know how you solve that. I mean, it's just awful. It's awful for everybody. It's awful for the homeless people, and it's awful for the people who have to deal with the homeless people. I mean, maybe that's not politically correct to say, but it's awful for everybody.
Mhm.
Homelessness affects everybody, and so why don't we solve it already? I don't understand why we haven't been able to solve certain of our own domestic problems that seem like they're solvable. But then after this last election,
They
I'm
do
not
seem
going to say
solvable.
who
Yeah.
or what. I see. Oh man, it is not solvable because you can get two intelligent people of different parties in the same room and get them to agree on almost anything. Um, Crap. I don't know how you're ever going to resolve any of these issues now because I don't know how you're going to get enough people to agree.
Yeah. I
I don't
mean, to
know.
me, I feel like it's really more class. Race is just a smokescreen, you know what I mean, for classism. That's kind of how I take it. But what I was
Yeah,
thinking about with the stature thing in terms of like being able to be mean or like that kind of thing, it's like it kind of made me think like, oh, you should embrace your disadvantages. You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of ties into what we're talking about, but that's more political. And this is in terms of like the, as a writer, like understanding like who to put in different parts, like you can like have people who do know how to embrace their disadvantage. Like, that's an advantage actually. It was an advantage that he was short. It probably helped the
absolutely.
story like evolve. It's an
Oh, his
advantage.
his shortness was so great for the series, for his character, for his career.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to say, but being short is probably the greatest asset he was given. His
Hmm.
gift from God to be short, and he'd say, "Why did you give me this curse?" And the
Hmm.
voice would say, "Well,
Yeah.
just wait. You're going to see why."
Like
And then
Peter
it turned out,
Dinklage.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 it's fine. I was just thinking, yeah. I mean, it's just like Danny was able to take what we all would consider a handicap or a
Hmm.
disability and turn it into an advantage and a blessing. And it's true. And he has a good life. He has a normal outside life with as much as a famous person can have a normal outside life,
Right.
um, and a rich famous person. So there's two things that affect him differently now. But I don't think Danny would. Would you think if somebody said to Danny, you could have been tall and handsome, or who you are, which would you choose? Danny would choose who he is in a heartbeat.
Hmm. Yeah, we talked about this before, and I couldn't think of the actor's name. Peter Dinklage, who was in, he played Tyrion in Game of Thrones. He was also in
Uh huh.
Death at a Funeral. Like,
Yeah.
people would say, oh, that's a disadvantage. Him being a little person is a disadvantage. But when you watch him act, he's a phenomenal actor. I mean, his
He
facial
is.
expressions and just the way he draws you in, it's next level. I mean, it's better than even people who would be considered like not have that disadvantage. So, but it works for
Yeah.
him in his career.
It worked for him in the kind of parts he got, but he's such a good actor. I think he
Yeah.
might have made it at any size,
Yeah.
because he's really got all. But then his personality was created partially by the abuse he got because of his size. Must
Right.
have affected him in some way.
Sure.
That probably comes out in his acting. Whatever, he's a wonderful actor. He gets parts that work for his size, and he's doing great. But I'm sure there, for every one like of him, there's all these little people who can't get work because there aren't enough parts written for little people. So
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing too. But here I was actually thinking about this when you were saying that is Danny DeVito's part in Taxi. It wasn't written for a little person, or he's not a little
mm,
person, but he's I
yeah,
don't know
a
how they
small
what the
small
cutoff
person.
is
Yeah,
or whatever. You know what I mean? But I don't want to get too political in the
no,
size
I know.
differentiation. I don't know the measurements, but in terms of but he stole the show. He was able to be what the character needed to move the story forward. And that's the other
Right,
thing is it has to move the
without
story
ever
forward.
saying it, the moment where Bob Keats used to say the moment he knew Taxi was going to be a monster hit was when Danny stepped down from his cage
Mhm.
after giving everybody hell from the cage, and
Mhm.
you can't tell,
Mhm.
and he was still funny, but he
Yeah.
steps down from that thing and you see his size. Bob said, "Oh, he's going to be the star of the show, and it's going to be a big hit."
Yeah.
And it was exactly true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That, and that's like, like Carla, like we said, she's a smaller stature woman, so she can,
that
you
helps
know,
her. That
cuz
helps her.
if Norm had come in and he's swinging his, like, swinging his balls around and he's like all mean and you know what I mean, it's a different kind of show. It's a different character. He has to play the lovable guy
Yes,
because
because he's a
he's a
big
big
guy. If
guy.
he's a big guy picking on people,
Yeah.
wouldn't work. Wouldn't
Yeah.
work.
We have a general sense of like right and wrong, embedded in us, I think, and we're taught some of it also, and everybody has a different
Yeah.
idea about it. But you know, um, that's very interesting. The lovable giant. People like a lovable giant. And
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah. They love a lovable giant.
yeah,
Yeah, a big guy. They love him more. A big guy who could knock the shit out of you, who is instead very gentle and peaceful.
yeah,
And that's almost a cliche character, but
sure.
it always works.
Hmm.
But I haven't yet seen any more Danny DeVitos. I haven't seen any more yet smaller men who are playing these really nasty characters, and I think it's a wonderful character. I think somebody should be doing that.
Yeah, and we talked about this before too, like how you have at least like 4 or 5 must-haves for, and it's not like a must-have, but you go like you approach it this way. You have a dumb character, you have a smart character, you have an attractive character, and a mean character, and like how their
Yeah,
interplay is very and you can track that across different shows, you know what I mean, and see like, okay,
yeah,
yeah, this is very interesting. Like there's
yeah.
really
There's
something
the
to that.
mean person. There's the attractive person. There's the stupid person. I don't like to call them dumb. I know everybody does, but
Yeah.
to me, dumb means something else. But
Means you're a scumbag, is what
you know,
we
yeah. When I say dumb, if I say stupid, people get offended by stupid. They prefer I say dumb. And I say, yeah, but dumb is kind of a derogatory. It became derogatory because of the way people were using it, so I don't like to use it. They
Hmm.
use dumb as being stupid, and dumb isn't stupid at all originally. It
Yeah.
wasn't stupid at all. It was about an ability to speak. But um, the language has gotten so adulterated. It's like
Hmm.
words that mean other things. Now you can't say. I used to love the Flintstones, and you say we're gonna have a gay old time. That was in their
Mhm.
song.
Yeah.
If you say that today, you expect a lot of gay people, a lot of homosexual joke or story, whatever. But the gay didn't mean anything then.
Mhm.
In that short period of time, the word gay has completely changed. Well, if you use the word gay in anything now, the first thought I think people have is a gay man,
Mhm.
a homosexual man.
Mhm.
It's probably your first thought when you're gay. You no longer think of somebody just happy and lighthearted and all that. But it used to be, well, even when I was a kid, somebody could say, oh, hey, you're gay. What's going on? And you'd
Mhm.
say, oh, I don't know, I just woke up feeling, good. But you can't say it anymore. You couldn't say it in dialogue even because somebody would hesitate for a moment. What do you mean? Why did you say I'm gay?
Mhm.
So I'm just saying language keeps changing. What's changed now? Rainbow is changing, and
Mhm.
the colors of a rainbow are changing because of the gay movement.
Mhm.
Black is different, means something different now. There was a time when black people didn't want to be called black. They felt that was derogatory. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, Now it's been completely turned around. And white, I don't like being called white because white to me is a derogatory term.
Yeah. I mean, it all. I mean, I think it's all context, like how somebody's meaning it, and why the person, what the superiority level is of the person who's, stating it or whatever. But there was a lot of homosexual characters in shows. It wasn't. Now everything is on the nose. That's the thing. There's not like a subtlety. You know what I mean? It's a very different kind of
Oh
world
yeah,
we
there
live
were
in.
homosexual characters who played like they still hadn't come out of the closet, kind of
Hmm.
homosexual in the old shows. But
Hmm.
today, people say they're gay and they're proud of it, and rightly so, and they play that part.
Hmm.
And yeah, we didn't see much of that when I was a kid. We saw gay people on television and movies playing those kind of characteristics that we would stereotypically associate with gay people, and not say it,
Hmm.
not acknowledge the person was gay. So the language has changed, and our perception and our politically correct areas have changed, and then some haven't. It's like there's still prejudice today that will never be end, that I can see. I hope they will. I hope somehow some of them will end, but people don't like people who are so different, who look different and talk different, have different backgrounds, and not, again, just some.
Hmm.
I'm a person who loves all the differences.
Hmm.
I love being in a party where there's all kinds of people. There's people of different races, people of different ethnic backgrounds, people different sexual orientation. I mean, each person brings something different, but and we can do that more on TV than we ever did.
Hmm. Yeah, now it's not a faux pas, but that was like the basic premise of Jack Tripper, being able to live with two girls. And Mr. Furley wasn't really, he was always
Right, Ted.
questioning as to why he was there, because he didn't want to,
You're right. You're right.
as if you couldn't just
You're right.
co-inhabit a space with and be
Yeah.
heterosexual and just live with
Yeah.
two women, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be something torrid.
And I bet if you looked at old episodes of Three's Company, there would be really offensive stuff about gay
Sure.
men.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
because
Mr.
he was
Furley used to wear the
always,
scarf. It was kind of ambiguous, you didn't really know what
that's
was
the weird
going on
part.
with
He
him.
he played gay, but he was prejudiced
Hmm.
against Jack because he thought Jack was gay.
Right.
Um, I
Then
mean,
you have
he
the
had a lot
ditzy
of,
blonde character, like that wouldn't fly, like people would feel slighted about
yeah,
that.
yeah. Why'd you be the ditzy blonde? Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's funny. They used to be our lead-in on Taxi, and they used to get huge ratings, and we'd
Hmm.
always fall off a little bit with Taxi. And then Jim Brooks offended everybody at ABC with his lack of social grace for them. He wouldn't allow them to participate at all. So
Hmm.
he said, "We gotta get rid of this guy." TV's a lot of the TV is about power. And these
Hmm.
guys who were running ABC said, "Why are we letting this guy with one show on the air, kick us around and tell us what we can and can't do? It's not worth it. Let's get rid of the show." And everybody said, I'm looking behind the scenes. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure this would happen. The people said, "We can't cancel it. It's our number one critically acclaimed show in that regard. It gets nominated and has won 4 consecutive years as the best comedy on the air. We can't cancel it or we'll get a lot of heat. They'll want to know why we canceled it. We can't do it because of power."
Hmm.
So What did they do? They moved us into a terrible time slot.
Mm-hmm.
That was their way of getting rid of us. Now it'll take a whole year now, but they won't get any heat for it when they cancel us for bad ratings, which is exactly what they did. They put us in the worst time slot they had, took us away from Three's Company, where we had a big lead in,
Mm-hmm.
put us in the worst time slot they had on the air in primetime TV, and otherwise it'd be too obvious, and said, well, we want to build that time slot. Well, everybody knows that time slot has never been built, is impossible to build until now, where people use these stream it at home or record it. In those days, you couldn't record; you had to watch it where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And Taxi was in the world's worst time slot, and our ratings just fell right off the charts. We went from in top 10 to like some probably toward the bottom third of ratings,
Mm.
and they canceled us for bad ratings.
That's crazy. So it was like a setup. And you would
It
think
was
like
definitely set up.
you would think they would like, but maybe I was gonna say you would think that they would just start to stamp down on you with notes, and like we were talking a little bit about notes earlier, but a lot of people dread notes, and sometimes they can be helpful because it can, help fix a problem that you can't see because everybody's so involved. But you
I
were
agree
saying,
with you. I
Jim,
like notes. I like
yeah,
hearing notes. Doesn't mean I'm going to do them, or doesn't mean I'm going to do them exactly as they were given. But
right,
I like notes. They're usually helpful to make you think about something.
yeah,
They help stimulate the brain. No, if they'd given us harder and harder notes and made them, like you said, stand down a little bit, Jim would have ignored them anyhow. Jim didn't read their notes.
hmm.
Jim told me when I was running this show, I not to read their notes, not to read their memos, not to read anything from the network. And one time, somebody from the network, some sneaky ass, called me directly, not going through Jim, because I was running the show then, though they knew Jim still was calling the shots
Hmm.
ultimately.
Yeah,
Though he wasn't running the show day to day, he was, you
it,
didn't do anything Jim didn't like.
yeah,
And they called me and say, hey, Kim, we don't know what shows are coming up. Will you send us an update of the episodes you have in development? I said, sure. I was a showrunner. So I sent him a list of all the shows we had, we were developing the ideas for that we hadn't shot yet. And when Jim and Ed Weinberger, Jim Brooks, Ed Weinberger, found out,
hmm,
they they just beat me up over it. They were furious that I gave ABC a hint of what we were doing, and
nowadays
that's
though,
what got that's what got us canceled. Their attitudes what got us canceled. What I did, give them a hint, and they would have been satisfied with that. We'd thrown them a bone once in a while. They
hmm,
wouldn't have pulled us out of Three's Company and stuck us in the dungeon.
yeah, yeah. But I was gonna say like nowadays, they've orchestrated it in such a way to where you have like all these preliminary things where you have to check with everybody. You don't get that
Mhm.
buffer, you know what I mean? And I don't. Does it make a show better to have all these people put it, because it's you can't say scumbag or something like that, like things of that nature, like now it's weird because cancel culture is really huge, but at the same time, you can be completely brazen about who a character is. You know what I mean? Like you can state, and everything is so on the nose. There's not a lot of subtlety and subtext, and it's a different kind of world. It's a lot of emotions on the table and kind of, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and sexuality,
Yeah.
not just homosexual differences, but heterosexual sexuality has had a revolution for television. You couldn't have two people sleep in the same bed who were husband and wife when I started, and now people talk about sex and specifically about there's certain words they can't say on networks, but they say what they do, those parts to do, and they talk about the sexuality in graphic detail that sometimes makes you cringe.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure. It's a bit much, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
because
it's a
it's
little
like,
bit too
what does
much.
this have to do with the show? You know what I mean? Like, it's just shows
But the
about people's
network loves that.
sexuality.
The network loves that stuff. That's what pisses me off. That's when you get a lot of bad notes from networks that make it sexier, make it hotter, make it, and you want to say, what about substance? What about depth? I've never gotten a note from a network about this needs more depth. This needs
Yeah.
more thought. This needs more uh, care. It's always sexy, hotter,
You never got that
faster.
note like, hey, we
Yeah,
need a little bit more, what if the characters had a little bit more, yeah,
let's slow it down and
evolution?
have a little let's slow it down and have a little moment of empathy here. Yeah, you
Yeah,
never get that from the network. No,
that's
never.
hilarious. That's actually very telling though of like what it is, you know. I mean, what is it that they're driving for? You know what I mean? Like, what's the
Numbers,
purpose? Yeah.
numbers. They're not about artists, and those people who are network executives who now will never hire me because I'm saying this are still, I'm going to say it, that they want, their job is to sell shows, not make great shows, and they make great shows once in a while that sell the network. It's
Yeah.
all about selling, selling, selling. Sell the show, sell the network, make money, 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 money. But other people in other businesses that are all about making money, nobody attacks them. The problem here is we think we're artists, or I believe we are artists
Right.
on the ground levels who are actually doing the shows, and these people are the ones who pay our salaries. So without them, we don't have a job. So
Yeah.
you can't eliminate them, but then you can't really. Though I'm criticizing them on one hand, on the other hand, I'm saying somebody's got to do that awful job of selling our product. And selling products is a hard thing, and people lie and push it up, and it's very easy for them to say, "Look, this will sell, this will sell, this will sell." And you have to say, "Yeah, but is it good for the show?" And usually, people who get in those jobs about sell, 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 don't stop to think about, is this good for the show, or is this good art? They're
Hmm.
salespeople. That's what they do. And we're artists who don't want to sell. We're stubborn on the other side. No, no, it's got to be artistic. I don't want to sell. I don't want to do a selling point. I don't want to add something that's going to make it more commercial just because it'll make it more commercial. And they're saying, yeah, but it all works together. So we're kind of prejudiced against them, and they're prejudiced against us. We're the artists, and so people tend to look more favorably at artists than they do at money people and sellers. But it's just we all have different wheelhouse tools, or whatever you call it, wheelhouse or toolbox
Hmm.
or whatever,
Yeah.
and we use what we have. If a guy's born who's kind of aggressive and is a super talker, he's not going to do as well as a half-hour comedy writer as he would maybe running the network.
Hmm. That's
But
interesting
somebody's
though.
got to do it.
It made me think like, what is somebody like looking over Rembrandt's shoulder and was like, we need more boobs in these, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he's like, I'm an artist, this is a pastoral painting, and he's like, nah,
They
boobs.
would do that today. Today they'd have, yeah, they'd have the Van Gogh episode where, I mean, series, and they're telling them, why can't you do tits? What's your problem with titties? And
Yeah.
you're going, Van Gogh, you're going, but yeah. So I've had people, when I've had this discussion, who say, then be an artist, be a novelist, be somebody where you don't get as much influence, and but that's all changing too. Artists are told to make this stuff more approachable, who are artists, fine art artists,
Hmm.
and it's just all over the place. There are the salespeople and there are the artists, and they don't really mesh well.
Hmm.
They're from two different worlds. And the guy they'll say what I said, hey, if we don't sell your stuff, you can't do your stuff.
Hmm.
You'll starve.
Hmm.
You need us. And it's true.
Yeah, it's interesting how much influence commercialism has over, um, products like that. And maybe that's why the Netflix model is doing so well. It's because they don't do commercials. You don't have to stop for a commercial break. They want your
Right.
data. They're going to sell your data to a commercial agency on the side, but your watching habits, your viewing habits, your interests, but
Their
the
only
content
influence
is
is that
strong.
they still want to have a lot of people watching because there are subscription fees from which they make the
Hmm.
huge amount of money that's critical. So they do care if people are watching, but like you say, not show to show, and they're not keeping track like that. They're keeping track of their overall, how many people are subscribing. That means we're doing a good job if we get a lot of subscriptions.
Hmm.
Um, so they have to use more, I think, artistic and non-specific sales thought when they're dealing with these shows. They still have to think, do you want to put a show that nobody's going to watch? It's a wonderful, brilliant show. Well, they'd probably put a wonderful, brilliant show on, because the thing about their overall marketability is based on the impression of the series more than on individual episodes. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think's going on there? You think that's why Netflix does better shows?
Well, I mean, I know that they definitely have a little bit more flexibility, and I don't think they do notes, and they also don't give ratings. You know, they don't. They have
Right.
ratings. They understand ratings. They're tracking all that stuff very intimately, but
Yeah,
they
they're
don't share
tracking
that
it.
stuff, and they don't share it with other networks. So
And I
you're not
don't think they make
competing.
decisions on ratings. They wouldn't cancel Taxi for low ratings.
Yeah.
As long as Taxi's still winning, getting best series, they would Taxi be on the air, at Netflix.
But you have shows like The Good Place, which was definitely a different type of, half hour comedy. Um I don't
Are
know
you
if
sure
that
that's, I
I
think
don't
that
think that played on network.
no, I think it did. I think that
Did it
was
play on network?
NB. I
Maybe
think
I
that was
just caught it on
NBC.
Netflix. Maybe it
Oh
was
yeah,
on
yeah. You
Netflix.
might have caught it afterwards. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was a network show. If you think about the language, language is a pretty good indicator. If a
Hmm.
show never says fuck or shit,
Yeah, yeah.
um, it's network.
They
But
have
you can say
sitcoms
all
now that
kinds
do
of
that.
things.
It's kind of
Hmm.
and on Netflix they have sitcoms that'll have
Oh
curse words, and it's kind of jarring. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or they have
Or a
that show
sitcom.
with Ashton Kutcher, The Ranch, which is supposed to
Yeah.
be like a multi-camera show, and there's a laugh track, but I don't know why
Oh yeah, that is
it
weird.
throws me off so much because I'm like, this is not filmed in front of a studio audience. I don't know what it is because it's on Netflix. It doesn't seem.
I don't like that either. And I don't know what it is either. And they do outdoor scenes with laugh tracks and stuff.
That's
And you go,
odd.
where's
That's
the audience
bizarre.
sitting? It's just,
Exactly.
you know what? I've talked about this where we compare a soundtrack, music soundtrack to adding laughter because laughter is a pleasant sound as well.
Yeah.
So you can add music almost to any scene, and if music's good enough, it can't be terrible music. But if music's good enough that you're not even really noticing it, nobody complains about the artificiality of somebody outdoors and suddenly they're professing their love and suddenly we hear violins and things.
Yeah.
Nobody ever complains about that, but they would complain about a laugh track out there. And I think it's because sounds are all different. A laugh track is like you wouldn't put a tuba in a love scene,
Hmm.
so you're not going to put laughter in that love scene because it doesn't feel right. I don't think laughter feels right in any outdoor scene. Somehow it jars our brain. And
Hmm.
since music is kind of a feel feel your way through, the rules there are rules, but so much of it is how you feel. I think there's something to be said for laughter does not work outdoors. It
Yeah.
just does not work as a sound additive when you're outdoors.
And it's
And in
interesting.
some scenes,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
No, well, in some scenes, even indoors, it doesn't work because the scene's very intimate and somebody says something funny and suddenly you hear those laughs. Jars me again. I don't
Hmm.
like that. So
It's kind
that's
of
a
an
case where,
antiquated thing, you know what I mean? Like if you watch like something like Big Bang Theory, it's because of the way I don't. It must be the sets and the style or something, the shooting that you accept it for certain shows, but not other shows.
yes,
And I think like
true.
with the music, if you've edited before, then you'll start to recognize how bizarre it is to just throw another sound in there. You know what I mean? Like when you're sitting there in the editing room and you're picking music, it's like, oh wait, this is very impactful, and it could tie a scene together. It can work, but at the same time you become much more aware of that. Now the general audience doesn't really have any knowledge of that. Maybe more people now because of YouTube and people doing all these video creating on their own. But yeah, until you brought that up, I hadn't really articulated it in that way to think like, yeah, you can throw music into any scene pretty much, but
Yeah.
and you don't get the same type
If
of
you do the right
derision.
music. You know what I think it is? Because music has such a range,
Yeah,
huge range, and laughter is pretty much laughter. Laughter does not have a big range. I mean,
yeah,
you do soft laughs and hard laughs and feminine laughs and masculine, mostly a male audience, a female audience.
yeah,
Those things all sound
hysterical or
different.
chuckles. Yeah.
But it's all still laughter. It's like I play the banjo,
Hmm.
and Steve Martin does this. It's a great joke that he does about banjo is just happy music, and you
Hmm.
try and say you're telling a very sad story, and then you want to break into your music,
Hmm.
and you suddenly go bing 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 bing. It just doesn't work sad.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work sad. It's a very limited thing. Banjos are great, but within their certain area. I
Right.
think laugh tracks are like that. and another thing is, once you start a laugh track, you have to be consistent with it. You can't
Yes.
throw a laugh track into one scene because you think it'll help that scene.
Yeah.
Audiences then are jarred by the lack of the laugh track or by laugh tracks in scenes that you wouldn't expect. So laugh tracks will touch your sound. And I said it's like the sound of a tuba. Tubas don't play well for emotional things, but some
Yeah.
emotional things. Some things tubas are wonderful for. That's why it still exists as an instrument. But tubas are limited in the way I think banjos are limited, in the way I think tracks are limited. They all have value in their own areas, but
Hmm.
they're not versatile like a piano or violins or guitars. They're more versatile. They seem to be able to find a place in almost anything. And I think that's the problem with the laugh track. It's too strange a sound to not really stand out when you put it in.
Hmm.
So you can only put it into comedies, really. And I'm telling you, I don't like laugh tracks, and I come from the world of laugh tracks. But I used to defend it, saying it's we're adding a sound that's good, like people add music. I used to say that when I did Taxi and Cheers, because people used to tell me they loved the sound of the laughter,
Hmm.
but they belonged in those shows.
Yeah. 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 Oh, they love it in those shows.
Yes, in those shows.
Right.
They
Yeah.
loved it in those shows because it felt natural in those shows,
Yeah.
and they love the sound of laughter. And even when it's coming from a laugh track, which is based on real audiences, no laugh track is just totally manufactured from a machine.
Hmm.
There were machines that augment laugh tracks, but they were recorded from real laughter.
Hmm.
So it laughter's strange dude. That
Yeah.
laughter character, it's like I still like it in a 2-act multi-camera half-hour comedy with solid jokes. I still like a laugh track,
Yeah.
but I don't like it anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't like it anywhere else.
Nobody buys an album full of laughter. And in fact, you were saying, I think maybe it was in one of the drafts of your book or something like that. Were you talking about the the history of the person who started going around recording the different laugh tracks and everything?
It was in an online class I wrote for a university, but it's not in my book because I didn't think it was relevant
Hmm.
to being able to write. So
Yeah.
my book is short enough where it's only about things that are important to the writing and not as many sidebars. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting idea that the guy who invented the laugh track machine, even, I mean, that guy made a fortune. I mean, a huge fortune. What he did is he recorded laughter from these live audiences, and he figured out some way to computerize it so he could take pieces of it and make, like I said, laughter just women, just men, primarily women, and some men, and hard laughter, guffaws, soft laughter, chuckles, and they all sound real because they're all real laughter. But he can do it in an instant. You say, I don't know, it seems, that's a funnier joke than we never did this on Taxi, but they
Yeah, I
do it
was
on
about to
shows
ask.
like this.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, we never did. That's a funnier joke than the audience got. So push up the laughs,
Yeah.
and he can do that. I've seen that done. I've seen him push up the laughs. What we have done is sometimes we'll record a scene. This is where I've seen it done in person. Is that we'll record a scene, but the actor flubs the line or the
Hmm.
camera's out of place.
Hmm.
So you have to reshoot the scene in front of the same audience that just saw it. And the
Hmm.
second time you play it, they barely laugh at all.
Right.
And so then when you in editing, you're looking at the two scenes. Oh, this one's flawed. This one's fine, but there's no laughter. Push up the laugh
Right.
to
Yeah.
what it was, to what it really was.
That's interesting too. Like you have like you're onto something when somebody can watch the same thing multiple times and still get like not only the same laugh, but some like I used to watch some comedies where it's like I would laugh
You know,
more. You know what I mean?
there are some bits to do that. That's interesting. Some things get bigger laughs by repeating. Most things falls way off the second time. Most most jokes are based on surprise,
Hmm.
but repetition of the same joke is based on it's on recognition, which is different than surprise.
Right.
There's a little bit of surprise, but it's more about recognizing something that you no, and it comes back and it's like an old friend. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, and then sometimes it's just they're not going to do this another time, are they? And they do it
Yeah.
a third time. You go, oh come on, that's too many times. But then you do a fourth time. The fourth time you kind of chuckle. These guys are idiots. And the fifth time you just can't believe you did. Now you're laughing at the audacity of these people
Right.
doing the same joke 5 times in a row. So yeah, there's all kinds of. That's why when a student once asked me, "Well, how do you write jokes? How do you make something funny?"
Right.
They asked me in a class like I was going to answer that in one sentence, and then they're going to be able to go out and write comedy. I said, doesn't work that way. You have to have a sense of humor.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did this
And
student have a sense of humor? Like, were there somebody? No. Okay. Well,
it was
then it's
somebody
like
without a sense of humor. Yeah.
that I don't
So you have to have
understand.
a sense of.
I do not
Why they take
understand
a
people,
comedy class?
or just I don't understand people with no sense of humor. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
that is bizarre to me. It just seems like it doesn't fit. I mean, not in a comedy writing setting, just in general. Like people who don't like they're so serious all
yeah.
the time. They don't think anything's funny. They
Yeah.
don't like some people really get upset if you laugh, like if you laugh at, they'll really get upset. Like what are you laughing at? They always
Well,
think
you
it's
know what?
personal.
Yes, yes. They think it's about them. My
Yeah.
mom's like that. If somebody laughs in the room, she goes, "What? Why are you laughing at me?" And they go, "Well, this
Yeah.
isn't about you. I thought of something funny." Oh,
Yeah.
you did not. You're laughing at me. It's that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
and
gonna say
that
we
is
were talking
funny.
about
you know.
yeah about how laughter sounds good to me. You were just laughing a minute ago, just now,
Yeah,
and it sounds good. I still love the sound of laughter.
sure.
You said who would go out and buy an album of laughs? I probably would. If
Yeah.
somebody made an album of laughs and each track was different, and
Hmm.
each section was different, I might buy it. Just not to listen to all the time, but
It
listen
might be
to
interesting actually
one
to have.
time. It'd be
Yeah,
funny.
play at
It'd
like
be funny
parties
to
and
listen
stuff
to
like that, just to put it
different
on the
kinds of
background.
laughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say one of the things I like about theaters that you don't get with TV, which is not in my book because I say only good things about TV in the book,
Yeah.
um, is when people laugh at comedy. I love the
Hmm.
sound of laughter,
Yeah.
and when you're in a theater, nobody put in a laugh track, so you can't blame anybody of artificiality. But people do laugh at the jokes, and they don't laugh at something that's a moment later that's serious. And I just feel good when all the people around me are laughing.
Hmm.
It just makes me feel good. It's a really positive energy and a positive sound.
Yeah.
So, and the other one that's similar to that, which is TV, which kind of makes the point about the value of soundtrack, is when I was a kid and my parents would make me go to bed earlier and they'd stay up and watch the adult sitcoms. I could hear the laugh track only. I couldn't make out what was being said, but I could
Hmm.
always hear the laugh track. It was a very different sound,
Hmm.
and it made me feel good. When I
Hmm.
was in my bedroom by myself, listening to the laughter come from the TV, it
Yeah.
made me feel good. It made me feel happier. It made me
Hmm.
feel things were right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things were
Yeah.
right in the world.
I think that's
So
maybe why they put like late night television has, it's like comedy. Like they tie up the evening with a little bit of comedy, before you go to bed.
hmm.
So people are kind of
But they
like,
don't have laugh tracks anymore, most of them. So you unless you are with somebody who's a free laugher, you're not getting that benefit of the laugh track. And that's my defense again of the laugh track.
hmm.
There's almost nothing that's absolute in this world. You
Hmm.
can't say laugh tracks are bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can say I don't like laugh tracks, and I rarely like to hear them. But I guarantee you there are times when you would like to hear a laugh track because they make you feel good. What was that?
That's my dog. I'd rather hear a laugh track right now than my dog. I'll probably edit in a laugh track over this little piece.
Yeah, hey, do that. That'd be
All
funny.
right,
Put a
yeah.
little laugh. Don't even say anything about it. Just throw in a little
Yeah, yeah.
laugh. That'd be funny.
I was actually
Um,
wondering, like, the guy who came up with the laugh track, like the box or whatever, what it was
yeah.
called. If he started to like notice different laughter to the point where he was not like listening to it for enjoyment. Like Norm Macdonald one time on his show, he commented to his co-host like, oh, that's a fake laugh. Like I can tell a fake laugh from a real
Mm,
laugh, you know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't want the fake laugh, I want the real laugh, and like I wonder if
Ah,
this person could like differentiate, oh, that person's just amused, or that person's like,
yeah.
that person is it's
I
a
don't know.
a laugh where it's like they're blowing them off. You know what I mean? Because there's a, there's a whole there's a range of laughter. It's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing, and laughter. Like in film school they always tell you like, oh, read what is it, Aristotle's work, The Republic, or something like that. Or what is it that always read that for drama or whatever. But you go to the comedy
Uh-huh.
section, and it looks like when I read that, I was like, it seemed like it was cut off. Like they didn't want to like fully like it was fully investigated, and the usefulness was um, known then, but they didn't want to like have people know what the purpose of comedy and laughs really are about. Like
Hmm.
and I always remember thinking like that section was really short, and I know
Hmm.
comedies are usually shorter, but
Yeah, people look down on comedies for some
yeah,
reason. They love
yeah, they
them,
do.
but they look down on the creation of them. It's a weird thing. I don't know, because they think they're easy because they're laughing and feeling good. It doesn't seem like it's work, I guess.
Yeah.
You were saying something oh yeah, about could this person who makes the laugh machine, you were right, it's called the box, the laugh
Hmm.
box,
Yeah.
who can make the box, could he tell between a real laugh and a fake laugh? Reminds me of what Jim Brooks used to do. And not just Jim Brooks. Most people who own shows would be pissed off at the writing staff for not laughing hard enough when the actors were doing their material, and say, look, if the actors aren't laughing, we're gonna have to rewrite it because the network's here. So
Hmm.
you guys have to laugh. But they could tell the fake laughs, and the fake laughs always were worse than no laugh at all.
Hmm.
And even to the actors, if an actor does a scene and hears all these fake laughs, I would be more insulted as an actor hearing all the fake laughs than no laugh.
Yeah.
I'd rather hear no laugh than fake laughs. Jim Brooks had the fakest laugh I've ever heard, and
That's
and
funny.
he'd always do it. And it's on his shows, like on the Mary Tyler Moore show. It's on Taxi. You can't not hear it because it's such a fake, loud laugh.
Yeah.
But he did that for the actors, and he thought it was good for the actors, whether it was fake or not, which I disagreed with. And it turns out the thing that I thought was a fake laugh, I've seen him laugh at in private situations too. So maybe I insulted him because maybe that's his real laugh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. So I don't. I'm one of these people who can't tell for sure between a fake and a real laugh. Some laughs sound fake to me, but I think Jim's laugh has sounded very fake to me. Possibly was a real laugh, except I know he was so interested in giving the actors that boost with the laughter that it had to be fake. But maybe his fake laugh kind of slipped over into his real laugh, and kind of polluted it. So his real laugh sounds like his fake laugh. I don't know, but I don't know anymore. When Jim laughs at things, I never know if he really means it or not.
But there is something to the tone of the laugh and the type of laugh. I mean, the Seinfeld did a whole episode on a woman he was dating that didn't have the right kind of laugh. And then for a
Oh,
comedian, you know
really?
what I mean? He's just like, yo, I got to get rid of this lady because she laughed
Well,
so.
what's wrong with her laughter?
I think it was Janice or something like that, wasn't it? I think where she was just like, the show The Nanny, where she has that really like high pitched, like kind of
Oh, yeah,
nasally
yeah,
voice, and I think
yeah.
it was kind of like someone like that, like had a
Oh,
nasally kind of, you know, and
there
it
are.
was an
That's
annoying
true.
laugh, actually. You know what I
There
mean?
are annoying laughs.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? The annoying element that takes away your appreciation and your enjoyment of the rest of the laugh. So
Yeah.
that's it. So you can't even make a statement like say, laughter is always an uplifting thing, because sometimes laughter can just irritate you, and sometimes it can bring you down when somebody laughs at something they shouldn't laugh at.
Hmm.
Sometimes that can be offensive.
Yeah. Like
So
tubas or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
laughing at tubas is not good. Tuba players hate that.
I used to play the tuba actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I played the tuba.
Why'd you pick the tuba?
No, I did. They picked it for me. I played trombone and marching band, and then
Oh,
like we had more trombonists than we needed, but we had somebody like the sousaphone player or same thing, sousaphone tuba like dropped out or something, so I would play the sousaphone every once in a while. It's a
oh.
it's a difficult thing to do.
Sometimes, but sometimes it's difficult to play the tuba.
Yeah, because it's like, it covers your whole face, and like, you're like bom 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 bom. It's
Yeah,
not, you're not playing the melody. It's not like you get all
yeah,
jazzed about it. You can move the thing around a little bit, but
yeah.
you're in these like really like, like Mylar slacks. You just look like an idiot anyway. You know what I mean? It's 100 degrees out there. You're marching
But
around
you
in
know what's
white
great
shoes.
is that's the only place you can put your big sign
Hmm.
that goes around where the opening of the tuba.
Yeah.
Very often they put the sign that has the school
Yeah.
where the tuba
Oh yeah.
opening. They put mesh over it and then write on it,
Yeah.
USC or something. You
Like
need
I've
that too, but they have that up there.
I've seen like like I sometimes will look up like old like or not old, but I'll still follow like marching bands and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like especially those people that the teams that do like the huge field formations and like they're moving around and all that stuff.
That's got to be hard to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
track of your music while you're having to hit marks.
Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
got to
And
be
you have
hard.
to you heel toe, so you don't like bounce. Like when you're playing. And it's yeah,
Oh,
it's a very difficult thing, but it works well with the percussion. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. You know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it just shows like my dorkiness, because like for it's like yeah, comedy. People don't like comedy, and then like people think band, marching band is super dorky. You know what I mean? It's like all the cool stuff. It's an upside down
You know
world we
what?
live in.
Yeah, it's funny. It just was down because I appreciate marching bands for that
Yeah,
reason. It's kind of dorky, but usually comes at halftime when
yeah,
you need relief from the intense football game to something that's fun.
yeah,
And the dorkier, the better. It's
yeah.
like and some bands embrace that. Like who's brand? Some famous was it Stanford? Somebody had one that just runs all over the place, and their formations are terrible, and they just
Yeah,
make fun of who they are.
yeah. You gotta embrace your disadvantage. That's what you go for.
Yeah, but I always liked marching bands. I admired that. Man, making those formations while you're playing your music, that's
Yeah,
hard. I
yeah,
didn't know you had to do heel toe. That's
yeah.
to keep you from bouncing, but I didn't even know about that part.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I lived in Fontana, and we were in marching band. I was in marching band at the time. I was in jazz band in the morning, and then I was in regular band during the day, and I was in marching band after school.
Wow.
Yeah, but there was just like a way to like not have to go to class. Like I didn't want to
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that with math. I wouldn't have taken all those classes with math or something. But
And yet there are the kids who are in the math club, and you go, who are these kids?
there are a
The
lot of
math
kids from
club
band,
kids.
actually. A lot of the kids that were really good in band were also really good at math, because you're always counting, you're
Oh,
always doing a lot of
yeah,
timing,
yeah.
But I don't know, band was cool. I liked band. Of course, when I got into band when I was in middle school, I wanted to play the drums like everybody. And my dad's
Right.
a musician, so I had it like already kind of embedded. And then it's like you want to play the saxophone because that's cool, And then it's like
Yeah, yeah. That would be my choice. I drum, saxophone. What's the next one in the marching band?
trumpet, you play trumpet, and then everybody's like,
Yeah,
that's
trumpet's not as cool as saxophone though. Trumpet's
yeah.
good.
And then you get like, then you start working down the line, it's like, well, I'm not going to be caught dead with a flute or a clarinet, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go that route.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I love the
Flute or
clarinet. I think
clarinet. Yeah,
they're
clarinet's
awesome.
good,
Yeah.
but you don't like the look of it.
Well, when you're trying to be cool, in middle school, it's not the go-to, but and then you're definitely not going to do tuba, you know what I mean? That's too dorky, because you look like an idiot carrying that thing around, as a little kid. But
Even
you
to
know,
yeah, to carry it to practice. It's like
yeah,
it's just a
actually,
tuba is a mess.
yeah,
I know somebody who played the bass, an acoustical bass,
yeah.
and it was the hardest part of his job was carrying that mother around all the time.
You mean a
From
stand-up, a
job.
upright bass?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, those
acoustical.
giant. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
he had to carry that wherever he went. He worked. He was a working musician,
yeah,
but he always had to carry the damn bass and put it in his car and get it out of his car. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was a hassle.
Huge hassle. Yeah. Actually, once in middle school, I hid in the tuba case. Now that I think about all this tuba related stuff, and my teacher, Miss Frankie, she's calling out roll, and everybody's giggling because I'm like hiding in the tuba case, and you jump out, and it's a big surprise or whatever. But yeah, band was fun. I think I like.
By the way, surprise again.
Yeah,
That's the comedy is surprise mostly.
yeah,
That's because I didn't say that to that person who asked me because I just had too much I'd have to tell them.
yeah,
So I just said, look, we would have to talk about this another time. Just too much. Can't tell you what's funny.
yeah,
But I could have said probably 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 10 times out of 10. But the 10th one is augmented a little bit. It's surprise.
yeah.
It's something you don't expect.
Yeah. I had somebody once when I was at a pitch, not a pitch meeting, but one of those, like in LA, you go and it's like a meet and greet, you know what I mean? Like one of those
Uh
meet and
huh.
greets.
Yeah.
And I was describing to someone, it was a meet and greet for Nickelodeon, and I was talking to this girl next to me, and she was saying like, "Oh, what do you write?" And I was like, "Oh, I write comedy," And she's like, "Oh, that's so difficult." And I was thinking like, it actually is not as difficult. If you have a sense of humor, it's not as it's writing drama. And we talked about this a little bit before, but writing drama and just making something like purposefully making people feel bad, I don't know, it just doesn't seem as like that seems more difficult to spend your time. But I've heard that writing rooms for dramas, they do like they make a lot of jokes, like that's actually a funny
Oh,
room.
really?
Yeah, and I
Oh, hmm.
and I don't know, like I think comedy writing rooms are usually pretty funny, but there's kind of a seriousness to it, because you got to get in there and get that comedy in there, but
Yeah. Comedy rooms are fun.
yeah.
We write rooms for comedy is fun because everybody in there not only has a sense of humor, their sense of humor is so well developed that they're making a living with it. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of good improvised jokes that aren't in the script.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you get to talk about stuff and like, you make I don't know why people would like have an idea about comedy as if it's not because you're making a joke about something, it's like you don't have any real sense of seriousness. It's like I'm usually making jokes about things that are very serious to me, like that's where I got hit by a semi in Dallas once. And like the entire ride home after we got picked up, I could not stop making jokes about getting hit by a semi. It was like, and then you just hear the audience. I started bombing. At first I was doing well, and then I just started bombing. But it was
Yeah.
like my way of dealing with it was just to make
Yeah.
jokes about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't that it wasn't a big deal to me. It's just that that's how I
Did you
handled
go to
it.
the hospital? Did you go to the hospital after that?
No, no, no. Like we just like we got sideswiped by a semi. It was a hit and run,
Oh.
and we spun out
Oh.
in the middle of the road. It was like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it had been raining, and it was a pretty serious accident. But the guy who was driving, he only got like a cut on his thumb from the glass breaking. And I remember like spinning, like we hit mid trailer, So I thought we were gonna go
Oh.
under the trailer, but he pulled the wheel to the
Oh.
right. And I remember as he pulled the wheel to the right, like a sound came out of me that like was not voluntary, like you're on a roller coaster, and it wasn't like, oh, we're having fun. It was just like, like this crazy sound came out of me. And I remember just thinking like, oh, we're gonna get like I'm gonna see the lights and we're gonna get hit, like because we're in traffic. But luckily, we just spun out on the freeway, and then cars passed us by. The semi just kept going, and we just got out of the car and you know eventually made it to a 7-Eleven and had somebody come have my brother's friend come pick us up. Like it was pretty crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did they ever stop the truck driver? Did the cops
No, no,
stop the truck driver?
it was a full-on hit and run. And the
Well,
guy who was
how come they weren't able to trace the truck?
well, because I told the guy who was driving, this dude named Chase, I told him like, look, you've been drinking, because he said he was on
Oh.
Benadryl that night, and he was like, I wasn't really drinking, but I was like, you said you were on Benadryl, and I for sure remember telling you, that's not gonna do anything if you take a couple shots. You know what I mean? Like, so I remember him taking a couple of shots, and so I convinced
Oh.
him like, oh, you probably shouldn't call the authorities because you've been drinking, and I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
hammered. You know what I mean? I was super drunk,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was just like kind of a crazy night. Totaled his
Wow.
truck, and they couldn't figure
So
out like why I
what
didn't
kind of
want to.
truck did he have? What did he have? A pickup?
Yeah, pickup, like a white pickup,
Oh.
just wrecked the whole side.
Wow.
He couldn't really understand why I
Yeah.
didn't want rides from him anymore.
Well,
Yeah.
bad visual uh, stimulation. It reoccurs. So,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't,
yeah.
because I wasn't driving. I was like, I remember just talking to him, and then as I'm talking, he's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, And I never could like
Um,
decipher if it was his driving or if the truck just. I
oh.
think we were in the blind spot of that semi, and so the truck
Yeah,
changed lanes.
it's possible. I've driven semis. I mean, my dad
Have
was
you
in the
really?
trucking business. Yeah, my dad was in the trucking business. That was his,
Oh,
his
that's cool.
living.
I wanted to
So
be
I've
a
driven
semi
semis.
driver actually.
Oh, you did?
Until then, yeah, until then.
Yeah.
I was
Oh.
like really
But
into it until
it's
that moment.
possible a semi driver doesn't even know he was hit.
Yeah,
I mean, that trailer moves while you're driving, and
yeah,
you bumps, and then you get all kinds of feelings. If you guys just sideswiped it, didn't hit it enough to move it,
Yeah.
which will take a lot of hit.
Yeah.
It's possible he doesn't even know he was hit.
Yeah.
It's possible he wasn't guilty, that he didn't know he was hit.
Yeah, I
Possible.
mean, I have thought about that because we were, toward the end of the trailer, not directly in the middle, but toward the end. That's why I kept thinking the wheels are gonna like crush over us, but
Yeah, yeah, that's a scary thought. Yeah, I mean that has
yeah,
happened. People have gone underneath trailers, and that's deadly.
it's a wrap. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So wow. Well, you got to cut all this out.
But this is that stuff, you talk about like keeping a file of things that you've lived through, and then you
Yeah.
know putting those things into the writing. Yeah,
Actually, yeah, yeah.
I
Go
actually
ahead.
wanted to be a semi driver up until that moment.
Oh,
Yeah, I was really into
really?
Peterbilts and yeah, like
Oh, no kidding. Yeah,
Kenworths and
Peterbilt's. Oh, yeah, those are the best trucks. I didn't
yeah,
drive those. I know I may have driven one because I drove for. My dad didn't have those. My dad had the cheaper ones. He had like a Freightliner and
Freightliner. Yeah, yeah.
but
Did he own
and
them or
some.
was he leasing them or did
Oh,
he
he
own a
owned them.
fleet?
He had a trucking company. He owned all those trucks.
Oh, really? Wow.
And Mack truck and some of those
Yeah,
that
Max.
weren't as good. I'm trying to think of anyhow. Yeah, but the Peterbilt was like the Rolls Royce of
Yeah,
trucks. Everyone wanted a Peterbilt.
yeah, yeah. They're super cool. I mean, I still, what it was is I think like a long time ago I heard that Carl Malone, who like I wasn't like a huge Utah Jazz fan, but I saw some expose on him where he bought a semi, and from there I started I got like really
Oh,
into semis, and I wasn't like a huge Carl Malone fan. I was just thinking like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you could own one of those. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And then
It'd be a weird thing to drive around for pleasure.
yeah, yeah. And that, I still like I'll still check out semis and stuff. I still like go online and like look up like cool semis and
Well, they're cool. They're big. They're a big piece of instrument. You know, when you're driving one, you have this awareness that it's
yeah.
a big motherfucker. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to. You know, you got to take your corners. You got to swing out way wide because you not only have to make it, your trailer has to make it.
Yeah,
And
totally.
when you swing out wide, some people come will want to go in between you and the spaces and you know the worst thing is when you're coming on an on ramp or you're going by an on ramp and either way drivers have no idea you can't stop this thing.
Yes.
You have so much momentum going.
They're
If
so
you have
stupid.
if
They
you have a
cut them
full
off.
truck going 70 miles an hour, full truck, all that weight, you have so much momentum you can't
All
stop
that
it.
kinetic energy.
Yeah, except with very long distance to stop one of those things. You start slowing it down with your brakes,
Hmm.
but you cannot just stop. Not it doesn't work. If you
Yeah.
were to do that, the whole thing would flip around and knock off everybody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, they'll
Jackknife.
come on ramps and they'll go right in front of you, and you're
Yeah.
going, fuck, I can't stop now. If for some reason you stop, I'm going to run you over. There's
Yeah.
no way I could stop. And they'll cut in from other lanes like that, and they'll, yeah, there's this real. You're driving, but you do feel you're up above the traffic, so you're higher than everybody else. So you're looking down on them, and you got this big piece of equipment,
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, but it's a little scary. I never was comfortable when I was driving. I was always afraid I was going to have an accident because
I think that's really
people
common
cutting in
actually.
and out, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Like
common for truckers.
yeah, because my cousin's a trucker and he's
Yeah.
been a trucker for years. And before that accident that I had, like, I went on a run with him from Fort Worth to Waco. And because
Mm,
he was like, I was telling him, like, oh, maybe I'd be interested in trucking. I was like, well, come on a run with
yeah.
me. You can see what it's like. And it was cool. It was like a bit interesting, but I learned about like the Jake brake and like, I learned how to like signal. So like my wife makes fun of me now because I still signal to trucks. Like I flash my lights at them
Oh, you do?
to let them
Yeah,
in so that
yeah.
that way they know like it's
Uh-huh.
safe so that that way they can get over. I give them a lot of leeway. And then, like
Usually they flash you back, right? Even though
if
you're
they
a
don't,
car
I
with
get like,
red.
I get kind of like, hey man, this guy's not following the rules, man. Like
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
don't give me the brake lights, like
yeah.
I get kind of like, or the hazards or whatever. But I learned that from him. And then, but yeah, a buddy that my little brother hangs out with, he's a trucker now also. And he talks about like waking up in the middle of the night, like screaming, like thinking he's about to jackknife. Like he doesn't like it, but he makes good money. But it's such a dangerous job
Mm.
that
It
he's
is a
like,
dangerous job, yeah. And jackknifing is not that uncommon, and it's really scary, and you don't have control of it. And sometimes, sometimes the on a windy day or something,
Yeah.
the trailer starts swaying,
Hmm.
and you're trying to hold this thing on the road, and you're swaying, and I didn't like it. I just drove for my dad mostly on smaller trucks when he had the trucking company. It
Yeah.
was all my life actually, all his life. He had
Yeah.
trucking company, and I would drive the straight trucks. Those are the ones where the box is right
Right on
on
the
the
cab. Yeah.
it's not a trailer and a tractor. It's
Yeah.
the cab and the box
It doesn't have the
are in
hitch.
one.
Yeah, with the
Yeah,
cables
they're
and
all
everything.
one unit. They're all one
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah.
Um, I used to drive those for him. I used to do that every summer. I'd drive those and make smaller deliveries, local deliveries.
Right. Right.
But I once got a job for Reynolds Aluminum Company in the recycling department when I first graduated from college.
Yeah.
And one of the things they liked about my shows you how stupid college is sometimes. With all my, you had to have a college degree to apply for management position for Reynolds, even with the recycling center, which is
Yeah.
all dirt and scum and awful stuff. But you still had to have a college degree.
Yeah.
But I had a college degree and I had a class one license. No, I didn't have a class one license at the time, but I did have experience that I wrote down on the thing that I had driven these trucks.
Yeah.
They hired me not for what degree I had. I had an
Right.
English
Right.
degree. It
Right.
was useless
Totally.
in recycling.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
hired me because I could drive a truck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of guys who could drive trucks better than me. Hire one of those guys if you really cared about driving the truck, and
Yeah.
and forget about this college degree requirement.
Yeah.
I had a guy working for me. He was a truck driver. He was wonderful with all kinds of tools. Sometimes we'd have to rent lifts and stuff that when we needed more. I had
Yeah.
the local recycling center uh, for the district, and I handled the whole San Fernando Valley and some of the city too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sometimes we just have too much going on. We'd have to rent another lift. We didn't have enough forklifts. Um, and he would operate those, and sometimes they weren't working. He knew which line had come loose or whatever. He was just this great. He was so perfect for this job. He had a nice personality. He liked the job. He was good with people. He should have been the manager, not me. I would have to go to him when there was a physical problem with the plant and whatever we're doing, and he could fix it. And
Yeah.
this is the guy you want. You don't hire someone with an English degree who happens to be able to drive a truck,
Yeah.
make him your recycling manager for the district.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So I used to recommend this guy for promotions whenever another one came up for another center would open up in my area. I always say I want to give him the center, and I always say no, he doesn't have a college degree.
Yeah. It's so
Every single time,
stupid.
no, he doesn't have a college degree. Well, what are you gonna do with a college degree? Talk to this guy. He's smart.
Hmm.
He knows everything. He now knows recycling. What are you going to get with a college degree? I used to say this to him. I mean, not in a hostile way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you going to get with a college degree that's going to improve what this guy can do already?
Yeah.
That's better than the rest of us with college degrees can do. You're missing a perfect opportunity to get a gem for your operation. Nope,
Yeah.
no college degree, no job.
Yeah.
So at some point, this is getting into one of those long stories. I'll try to shorten it a little bit, but uh, my boss, who was the district manager for that whole southern western state, um, said, "Hey, I saw you last night on the Merv Griffin show. That's when I was doing stand-up comedy."
Yeah.
He said, "What? That was you? I saw you on the Merv Griffin show." And I said, "Yeah, yeah." I thought he was going to compliment me because we did really well on the show that night. He says,
Yeah.
"You got to cut that crap out." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're in a management position with Reynolds. We don't put you in management position with Reynolds because you're going to leave us when you get some show business opportunity." He said, it's one career or the other. Do you want to be a comedian or do you want to run a recycling center?"
Yeah. I'm sure that was a hard one. That
Not
was
a
a hard one
hard
to figure out.
choice. But
Yeah.
run a recycling center for the rest of my life or be a comedian. Okay, I take the comedian.
Yeah.
And he said he couldn't believe me. He didn't believe I'd make that choice. I said, I quit. I'm through. Just send me my severance pay and we're done. It was nice working with you. And he said, well, wait a minute. He got called on his. He thought it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Which also reminds me of stories. When you pitch a story and somebody says no-brainer this way,
Hmm.
and then his partner says, wait, it's no-brainer this way. That's why I came up with the idea that you guys rejected because you said it was so obvious. You both thought it was obvious for the opposite reasons. So it wasn't obvious at all. You're just both stupid idiots. But they
Hmm.
didn't say that part. I had
Yeah.
to have an English show. So so this guy didn't expect me to say I'm leaving. So then he said, I'll tell you what. He said, you stay for a while longer and we'll give you some more money. And I said, I don't want more money. I don't want to stay for a while. It's just like, I know there's nowhere here. I know you guys are unhappy with the fact that I'm doing stand up, which is what I do for, I'm hoping for my living someday.
Hmm.
I don't plan to stay here. So I don't want to have any false things. But then I don't remember if I brought it up. I think I'm the one who brought it up. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a month. And they didn't ask me to stay for a month. They think I said I gave them 2 months. I'll give you 2 months. I'll continue running this center while you find a replacement. If you give my assistant the center.
Hmm.
And they did. They gave him a center, and he was their best manager. He's the best center runner.
Oh,
They
so you
gave it
did
to.
you did hook him up.
Oh yeah, got him a center. But
Oh,
I
that's
had to do
awesome.
2 more months. I had to run the operations for 2 more months, which wasn't that terrible. But he was very grateful. Really was a great guy. He was a great guy. He
Yeah.
just couldn't afford to go to college when he was younger, or chose not to go to college. I don't know. I never asked him why.
Yeah.
Because he's bright.
He sounds
A lot of
smart,
bright people
actually.
don't go to college.
Yeah.
So
He didn't do it. It sounds like a good plan.
yeah. But anyhow, he ended up managing. In fact, he it wasn't another center. I said I wanted him to operate my center, not necessarily be the manager of the region, which I was,
Hmm.
but have a center. And since I was going to leave in 2 months, it was logical to give him my center, which we did. I don't know if they still made that the center location for all operations, so I don't know what they gave him. I don't know exactly, but they did give him the center because he thanked me for
Yeah, that's
it.
cool.
And um, which had reminded me of that story when I tried to sell an idea to Whit Thomas, where Whit said, Ken, we don't like this idea because the conclusion is too obvious. Everybody knows where you're going. And Thomas said, yeah, it's just too obvious. And I said, really? Oh, it seems like a tough dilemma that this character's facing. I understand why the answer is so obvious to you guys, but not to me. I said, I don't know. So you tell me, what is the obvious answer? Because I
Hmm.
don't know. I just wanted to know what the obvious answer was.
Right.
And they both said the opposite thing. There were two choices. The character could either go this way or this way. And he said this way, and he said this way.
Hmm.
And I just looked at them for a minute. They said, okay, go ahead. You can shoot it. They did. They did have that, the decency to say, we're wrong, shoot it.
Yeah.
But how come how come they couldn't see that it was a choice that some people would? It's kind of like some Democrats and Republicans who cannot see the other person's perspective at all in any possible way. They're just looking straight ahead. Is it possible? Do people do that? They just go straight ahead. They never look from side to side. Are there people like that? Well, this is Whit Thomas, who are wonderfully successful, good judgment, artistic people, and who just look straight ahead. Only one was looking that way, one was looking that way, and I was looking there and looking both ways, and I was the one who was wrong. And had I not challenged them, we would have gone on to another idea because they thought that one was just too obvious.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
And writers are going to face it. You're going to get a note from somebody who just doesn't get it.
Hmm.
Somebody who will give you a stupid note because they don't get it. And if that's the only voice from the network in the room, you're stuck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Right.
it's up to you in the rewrite room to say, talking to other writers and saying, I can't go that way. I
Yeah.
cannot go that way. We're going to not do this note, but I didn't tell them in the room because we were going to talk about notes a little bit.
Yeah.
You never tell anybody their note is stupid because I've been in situations where people have been told the notes are stupid who had stupid notes,
Hmm.
then killed the show or killed the moment or because they have power still.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be called stupid, even when they are stupid. So
Yeah.
I
Well, they
didn't
think
tell
they're
the
doing
guy he was
something smart. They
stupid.
think they have an intelligent perspective on it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, they do. So I've run into that situation. So I ran into two intelligent, creative people could not see that there were two choices. They thought there was only one choice, and it was theirs. Yet they had a partner with whom they worked for years and years and years, and they knew each other really well, and couldn't anticipate that maybe my partner might see it differently than I see it, but they did. Absolute opposite points of view. I worked with them on another thing where we were rewriting a movie, and the same thing happened where there was a huge moment in the screenplay, a big plot turn, uh, and um, and one of them said, I don't like this because it just doesn't work for me. And the other guy said, that's what I loved about this moment
Hmm.
was what this turn. And the guy says, that doesn't work. And then they would argue for a while. Well, I think this turn is one of the brilliant moments in the whole screenplay. And the other guy says, it's awful.
Hmm.
And we eventually got to the point where we just quit the project because they couldn't agree. They couldn't agree in that case what to do. So they just canceled the project. We were in the middle of a screenplay rewrite and said, "Oh, we're not going any further with this because it was a major point. It was a major point in the film. So without that major point, the film was diminished hugely. Which the one guy said, that's why we should cancel the film because without that point, there's nothing. The other guy agreed. Without the point, there's nothing. I think it's a wonderful point, wonderful
Hmm.
turn. So you go up against that kind of stuff. What can you do? You want to say, let's have a therapy session where we actually talk to a third party who's not invested in this. But you can't do that. It doesn't work that way in show business. It's like a divorce. I've had a divorce, and that was ugly because it was just she's right and I'm wrong,
Hmm.
and no give, no give, no give, no give, no nowhere. So you do get a third. You try to get an arbitrator who will then be neutral. And I had a judge who said to me, Mr. Eston, you're lying. You're a lying. I think he said scumbag. I think he said something like that. He said, you're lying. Because I have worked with TV producers many times in divorce. This is a judge,
Hmm.
and they always hide their income when the divorce is coming up. And it's not hard. I know enough about your business to know it's not that hard to take a deferred payment. He says, you're obviously taking a deferred payment because your income dropped in half, and you want me to give her alimony based on this reduced income. Is you're lying to me, and I'm not going for it. And I was telling him the absolute truth. I couldn't get a job for about 2 years during a period I was getting older, and it was getting harder. And I went from making, I think that at that time I was making almost $1 million a year at that time. And earlier I'd been making more than $1 million a year, and suddenly I was making nothing. He says, "I don't believe you." And he didn't say, "I don't believe you," and maybe you're telling the truth, but the circumstances look so terrible. He called me a liar. He says, "You're a liar, Mr. Espen."
Hmm.
Because I've dealt with enough producers to know a liar in this situation, and he called me a liar. And I turned to my I hadn't had much court experience. I turned to my lawyer. Can he can't call me a liar. I've never seen a judge on any show I've ever seen call a defendant
Hmm.
or in this case, not a defendant, but two people, call one of them a liar. Can he do that? And he said he shouldn't really do that. He's saying real quietly, he shouldn't do that. There's nothing we can do about it. Nobody's here going to do anything about it. So just forget it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms, but the I mean, they're supposed to be impartial, That's the whole,
I
it's
would
like
think
such a
so, but
racket. If you watch Judge Judy, she does stuff like that, tells people like, I can just tell you're lying to me. And it's like, just because you're like higher up doesn't mean you can see everything. You know what I mean?
yeah. But in this
Yeah.
case, absolutely. This is the irony of it. So the judge knows he's right because Uh, he said, "You." I said, "I'm going to make you pay alimony." This was without alimony. It was temporary alimony because we were just splitting. I'm going to make you pay her as though you're. I'm going to make her based on a salary of 800,000. I'm giving you a break because you were making $1 million just a year ago. So you're going to have to pay her alimony based on $800,000 a year. And I
Hmm.
was making nothing at the time, and I had to pay her out of my savings to be able to pay on 800,000 a year. And I did it for 2 years, and then got a job that paid me 800,000 a year. And I'm sure the judge, if he looked back, I'm sure he never followed up on it, but would say, "See, he was
Hmm.
suppressing his income for the
Yeah.
divorce." But I swear to you, and I've got nothing to gain by lying to you about this, that or those people listening to me, that I went from making 800 to losing my job as a showrunner because my show got canceled to not being able to pick up another show for 2 years and making nothing and still having to pay alimony based on 800,000 a year, and then getting a job with 800,000 a year, and having people like anybody who knew would say, I wonder what was going on there.
Yeah.
That happens with in show business. You
Oh
can
yeah,
make eight
for
hundred
sure.
thousand, to make nothing, and to make 2 million, make yeah.
That happens a lot. I
But
mean, people like there's a very fluid. It's
that's
there's no
why
job security really. It's not like a
that's why
regular.
scumbag producers, which he assumed I was, can get away with that.
Yeah.
And because so many scumbag producers have done that to their wives, he assumed I was just one more scumbag producer.
Hmm.
And there's no way he could tell I wasn't. So I don't blame him entirely. He probably had 100,000 scumbag producers ahead of me in front of his court who were suppressing their income, so the wife wouldn't get it now, and they would get it paid back later and get the deal later. Um,
I wonder
anyhow,
if they get
I was
any
going to
like.
tell that. I tell that story to say how in reality it happens with your ideas too. You get somebody who's sure you're a scumbag, no good writer. You're a
Hmm.
hack writer because this thing does not work, and you know it works. You
Hmm.
know it'll work, and you cannot convince this person, and they say it's out, it's
Hmm.
gone, moving on.
I was thinking the thing that you did right though, like with the first version that you were talking about, where they both had two different options, and one of them was thinking something, the other one was thinking something else, and then the thing that you did correct was you asked them, "What is it that you're having an issue with? What's so obvious?" Not in a hostile way, like you said. You're genuinely curious, and I think like a lot of times when you get notes, you don't always get a chance to ask the person, especially like if you're getting notes from, studio executives or something like that, you don't get the option to question them about their notes. They're just, giving you these edicts from on high or whatever. But if you can ask people, then you can kind of narrow down what
Yeah.
the misunderstanding is, or what they're not seeing that you see so clearly, you know?
Well, you know what I would tell people listening to the show who end up running the show is do question them.
Yeah.
If somebody gives you a note that so undoes your episode or is so hurtful to your episode, you have to say, you have to say, what is it about that is fixed by your nose that's not there? And I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying that's a stupid note. There's an awful note. I'm not going to do it. Instead, I acknowledge that it's maybe a legitimate point of view, but I
Hmm.
always say, well, what is that perspective? Because I don't have it. I do not understand why this isn't working or why your note will fix it. Could you just tell me?
Hmm.
Do it that way.
Yeah.
And then they'll usually tell you, well, it's because the girl's wearing an orange hat. You go,
Hmm.
oh, change that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you
And
often
sometimes
find
it is
something
that
dumb. Yeah,
stupid.
it is stupid. Yeah.
But you still don't say, oh, that was so stupid. You just go back in the rewrite room. You say, call wardrobe and have her hat changed.
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating the point. It's usually not that. It's not that simple, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just not because this character said that, and so how can you do the scene when that character has that point of view? And well, if that bothers you, how much that in the rewrite room, you go, well, he didn't have to state that point of view. I mean, let it be subtext,
Yeah.
and it'll satisfy this guy because he just didn't say it out loud. And sometimes it's an easy fix.
Hmm.
So be diplomatic. That's my point. You brought it up again by saying you thought I handled it right
Hmm.
with those two guys. Yeah, always be diplomatic. And I've told you I was in a show where in a pilot, and the guy told the network to go fuck themselves because he didn't like their note.
Hmm.
And I swear I could have handled it. All I had to do is say, what is it? He was saying that the room made him claustrophobic and
Hmm.
didn't make anybody else claustrophobic. So this one guy who happened to be the advisor or the program uh, executive from the studio, from the network. I don't remember if it's studio network, but anyway, he said, it makes me claustrophobic. It's going to make everybody claustrophobic. And I said, nobody's ever complained about being claustrophobic, is what I would have said.
Hmm.
But Barry said, go fuck yourself. That's the stupidest note. That's a stupid fucking note. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Something like that. Really mean. And the next day, they pulled the plug on the show indirectly. They released actors to their second show options who had agreed to my show uh, as a courtesy of the actors, letting them know, oh, this show's not going to make it.
Hmm.
Didn't tell us, but did told the
Yeah.
actors, and then we found out from the actors they had all been released from having to commit entirely to the show, and it was all because Barry, in a moment when he was feeling shitty, he had to tell somebody to go fuck themselves when he didn't have to be done. We spent so much money and time making that pilot. It was a good pilot. and it might have been a successful series. And he had to say, tell the guy to fuck himself. And those are the words he used. I don't normally speak that way. I would say go have a coitus with yourself or something. I'd be nicer about it. But I wouldn't, one thing, I do this in personal life too, and I am guilty of this. Sometimes I get so mad, and I know it's going to come back and bite me, but I will say something to somebody, fuck you, or shut up, or something that I know is too extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives you that momentary relief from that tension that's built up, but it's going to do you more harm than it did that person. And so it's stupid. It's just stupid, but we all do it. I flip somebody off when I'm driving. I've yelled something at somebody who goes by because they did something bad or whatever. It only can hurt you, and it all does is give you a moment of relief. But I've done it.
Yeah.
But I've never done it in the movie TV business. I've never told anybody fuck off because I'm very aware. It's harder to put things in your personal life sometimes it is in your business life. Your business life, you just live that as you do business to live your personal life. It gives you the money, the income, whatever. So there you can, but when you don't want to sit at home and you're dealing with your wife, and with your wife, you've got to always worry about every single word you say, because then you never have a chance to just be you. So we do kind of, they say you always hurt the ones you love. I think it's true. You tend, the ones who love them will forgive you. You sometimes abuse them.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing too, like about writing, is you understand the psychology of characters and how one thing leads to another, the cause and effect. But in the real world, it's like, you can't always be objective like that, and the film and television, that world is very Machiavellian in a way, because there's so much at stake, and there's so much money, and there's so many egos, and so much power and control and all this kind of stuff. You have to tread very lightly, which is obviously different than a relationship in most cases, unless you're in one of those kind of relationships, which some people are. But
there are people in those relationships too. But even when I've been dating somebody who I need to impress, or she'll leave, there are limits. But in TV, you can't have limits. In TV, that's your livelihood. That's what you want to do. And these people are more thin-skinned than anybody you're ever going to deal with, even on your personal level. It just doesn't make sense to irritate somebody who has power over you.
Yeah, and it's better to be subtle and gain the control of the situation in a way that's not as direct, and not as potentially harmful. That's a lot of, it's not just that you lost out on that opportunity, the actors lost out on an opportunity, they went to another opportunity, but maybe it didn't work either, and then there's so many other people involved. It's I probably told you one time, I think I mentioned this one time, but you get stupid notes, and it is infuriating. You know what I mean? It's like, it takes a second to kind of take a moment or two to kind of okay, well, how do you, why is it that you're seeing it that way?
Well, I know. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've done that, and I walk away saying, "You're such an obsequious asshole, Ken. Why are you so obsequious? Why just stand up?"
Yeah.
But then another part of me says, "Hey, man, I like writing. I like the amount of money I make for writing. I'm not going to screw it up for a moment." I did stand up. I think. Tell me if I've told you this or if it's familiar, but when I did a series with Tim Robbins, and the network said, "You got to fire Tim Robbins because he's a terrible actor." This is a note, because he's a terrible actor.
Tim Robbins from Shawshank Redemption, yeah.
who's won 2 Emmys, 2 Oscars,
yeah,
2
Oscar
Oscars
winning,
for acting.
yeah.
So, but at that point, he had done nothing. He was an unknown when I found him, and well, I found him for my project. I didn't find him, but he was a courier. He was just working as a courier, and he came in audition, and I loved him. He was a great actor even then, and what he was doing in the show was wonderful, subtle, smart, and really well done. And they said, "You fire this Lox," and they called him a Lox, a dead fish, I guess.
Yeah.
You fire this Lox, or we will can't. Oh, so I said I won't. This is where I stood up for myself. I said I won't fire him. I said, you guys, this is a mistake. I said, what's your problem? I did the right thing for you. What's your problem with Tim Robbins? He's a terrible actor.
Mm-hmm.
Had they said we don't like his look, I would have thought that too. But if they said a lot of things they might have said, when I said he's a terrible actor, was totally the reverse. He was the best actor on the set.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say, no, he isn't. He's at this point, I think the best part of the series. So I'm not going to fire him. I actually did that. I said I'm not going to fire him. So how was I rewarded for my bravery or my? It's not so much it's bravery as it was just doing the right thing. I did the right thing, and they said, "All right, well, we're going to shut down the whole show, and you just put 125 people out of work instead of one."
Mm-hmm.
They said it that way, and I went, "Shit."
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't say shit. I didn't say shit to them. I'm thinking on the phone. I'm thinking fast, and like they mean it. They're going to shut down the whole show, and I've already got everybody's there. You know, we're in pre-production. We already shot the pilot,
Right.
and I can give 125 people their was it pink slip? What's it called?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
slip
yeah.
that
Pink
means
slip.
the
Yeah,
pink
yeah.
slip. 125 people a pink slip or one,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't answer them there. I went home and thought about it. I mean, on principle, I should stand with Tim,
Mm-hmm.
but he's still going to get fired because they'll fire me and him and shut the whole show down. We'll all
Mm-hmm.
get fired.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to gain by not firing Tim and everything to lose. So except my own integrity, I guess.
Yeah.
So I said to Tim, I explained it to Tim. I had to call Tim. It was Christmas time. He was going home to his family, telling me finally, they all thought I wouldn't make it as an actor. I just got my own show. I'm the star of a series,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was on there. It was an on there commitment,
Mm-hmm.
and instead he was now going to go home and tell him he was fired,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody believed he was a good actor yet because he hadn't had a job. Um, so I called him. I said, Tim, I have to. I didn't start out with this. Tim, oh hey Ken, how you doing? Oh man, it's so good. I really love the script today, and I really slow down for a minute. I have to tell you something. There's something bad happened. The
Mm-hmm.
network, for reasons that I do not understand, want me to replace you. And he dead silence. And I said two things I want to say. One, you're a wonderful actor, and that's probably what everybody tells somebody they
Yeah, yeah.
fire.
It's not you,
I
it's
don't
me.
believe it.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you have great
I said,
tits.
yeah. I said, you're the best part of the show. I think I
Yeah.
told most people. You didn't believe either one. And he hated me from that day on. To this day, he probably hates me because he probably thinks I just got rid of him because I wanted to make a change in the show. I don't know what he thinks, but he didn't want to hear the thing about putting 125 people out of business, out of work. He just said goodbye, hung up on me.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. You know what I mean? Nobody likes to be rejected. You know what I mean? Especially when you're riding that high and you think it's going to be your moment. And then you realize, oh, you're the only one that's out. That can't be easy.
Yeah, my left ear just went out. Hello,
Oh, okay.
I can hear you in my right ear. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Let me just finish. Let's just finish this thought because I still hear you in my right ear.
Yeah.
Um, that was one of the hardest things I ever did was firing Tim Robbins because I knew he was a wonderful actor, and I didn't want to be one of these idiots who early in his career was telling him he wasn't good enough.
Right.
He didn't believe me. He didn't
Yeah.
believe I wasn't one of those people,
Yeah.
and he was really furious at me for a long time. And then we didn't talk. I didn't talk to his agent, so to this day I don't know what he thinks. I'm sure I'm somebody he remembers as one of the people he hates
Mm.
for firing him from a show that went on the air with everybody still in the show except him and replacement for his part. That had to be so humiliating for him after he told his family about his show and all this stuff. Here the show goes on the air without him. There's a different guy in that part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like it's, that's the part of the business. It's a very cutthroat, you never quite understand like what's going on or, like like you said, for reasons unknown, you don't really know what it is that somebody's got an issue with, it could
That
be
happens
he wore an orange
with
shirt
the
that day,
writers.
you know?
Yeah, that's what happens with writers. Writers sometimes they'll tell you this script is awful. Again, this reminds me of another idea that when I wrote my first spec script that got me my job on Taxi, which was the very first thing I ever wrote. Somebody told me it was a piece of crap, and that same script got me two interviews, one on taxi and one on, with a producer who said, I'm going to put you on my show when I have my next show. But the one guy said it was a piece of crap. Now, fortunately for me, I sent it to three people, and two of them loved it,
Hmm.
and one hired me based on it, and one guy told me it was a piece of crap. So you're up against that as writers. For
Yeah.
all you listening, somebody may tell you something you have is crap. Do not let that destroy you.
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to happen. Somebody, and it turned out later on, I saw some of that guy's work, and it was all crap, including the show he was working on. That he was thinking about hiring me for. It was crap. Everything that guy ever did was crap. So when something was really good, he didn't get it. That's what happened with Tim Robbins. All the acting was so over the top that a guy comes in is playing everything so well. These dumbass um, finance people or the business people at Paramount, or it was the studio, now I remember it was Paramount.
Yeah.
Paramount, the business people couldn't see the good acting. All
Hmm.
they could see is he stood out because the other acting was so bad. It wasn't bad. The other acting was very broad, and he was playing a more real character, which was perfect for the character he was, because he was the base to our show. He was the center. He was like the Alex Rieger of
Hmm.
Taxi. It was perfect for the role. Yet they wanted to be big and silly like the other characters who were doing big and silly well,
Yeah.
but were big and silly. He wanted everybody. They thought everybody should be big and silly in the show, and didn't recognize his talent. So sometimes you're gonna write something so good that people who are used to reading crap all day look at it and say it doesn't fit in here. It's not in this world. It must be
Hmm.
crap. It must be really crap.
Yeah.
And that's why when that guy did I saw all his shows before and the show after. I knew the guy who gave me the note was full of shit, because that's what he does, shit.
Yeah.
And um, but it hurt when he first told me,
Yeah.
and
Of
then I had
course.
those other things that I rebounded from. But somebody's going to tell you your work's crap when it's great,
Hmm.
and they don't get it. This also, you ever hear the guy who wrote Confederacy of Dunces?
Yeah.
That
We talked
that
about that.
novel that novel won a Pulitzer Prize, but some people told him it was awful, and he killed himself. I mean,
Yeah.
he obviously had other problems as well. They've gone that far with it, but it was so devastating after he wrote his masterpiece novel that he knew was brilliant, and he couldn't sell it anywhere. Everybody was telling him it was no good.
Yeah.
And then after he died, it was published, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. So
That brings up an interesting question too, is like how do you differentiate from knowing your own work, your own integrity, believing in yourself versus being delusional? Because some
I
people
don't
think their
know.
work is great and you can just be like, maybe it's great. Maybe I'm not the audience, you know what I mean? But I don't see what it is that you're talking about. And, you don't want to tell somebody, like, I'm very careful when I critique people's writing or critique people's work. I'm not trying to deflate their ego or ambition, you know what I mean? I usually always address the work, but you can tell sometimes when, and I've critiqued people that, like, if you critique their work and you can see how delusional they are by their response to the critique, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
No,
then
no, that's true too. Sometimes that'll be the case. Here's what I usually say to students. I usually say, if you give it to one person and that person says this is crap, it means nothing.
yeah.
If you give it to 10 people and 10 people tell you it's crap, you better think about rewriting it.
They're onto something. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Unless they all
nobody
know
told
each
you they
other,
like
yeah.
it. Unless 10 other people said it was great, then you're just confused.
Yeah, yes,
But
of
I'm
course.
saying don't let one or two people tell you your work's no good, because it doesn't work that way. And but on the other hand, your point about being delusional, if everybody's telling you your work's no good, everybody's telling you that, it's probably no good.
And then there's some flukes that, like, everyone tells them it's not good. It comes out anyway and it's a huge hit. Everybody loves it. You know what I mean? It's like
You know,
that's a pretty rare, you know what I mean?
I don't
I
know
don't
of any cases of that, but I'm sure it's happened. I'm
I
sure
don't
it's
have an
happened.
example, but you hear people talk about, like, no one would buy this show, you know what I mean? I've heard that a lot, where somebody's like, I tried to sell this show to every studio in town and I couldn't, no one would buy it. And then this one, obscure place said, let's give it a go. They give it the green light and boom, next, that's how you get Family Guy, or, like something like that. Some huge, it's rare, but if you believe in it, you just believe in it. You know what I
I
mean?
know that's what keeps delusional people continuing to write, because 100 people tell them it's no good. And they say, I'm looking for 101 because it
Yeah.
happens. And you got to say, well, it does. But it's also like buying something based on you're gonna win the lottery this week. You know, I
Yeah.
just bought a ticket. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna win the lottery, so I'm gonna buy this house. It's $1 million house. No, you're probably not gonna win the lottery. And the guy
Yeah.
says, "Why not? I have a chance." And you gotta say, "Yeah." So when a delusional person gives you something that everybody says is bad, there is that one person who might put it in the right place and it makes money, or the right angle, or whatever,
Yeah.
or none of us are seeing it because we're all in the business and somebody outside the business might see it. It's a possibility, but it's like winning the fucking lottery. You can't count on it.
Yeah. And write something else. You know what I mean? Write another
Yeah,
thing. That's okay. You can and keep, hawking this one all around town, but then have another one in your trunk or your back pocket, so that way,
yeah,
and learn from that last story, learn from that.
yeah. You gotta learn from stuff. You know what's interesting in our conversations? You remind me of so many things when we talk that are sidebars or stuff I thought I forgot.
Yeah.
One incident reminds me of another one. And it reminds me of how useful all that information is.
Yeah.
But how do you teach these things if you don't know a lot from personal experience and from learning from reading or seeing examples? You get it as you get older, but Eric, we're all guilty of that. When I was 17, I thought I knew better than everybody. When I was
Right.
18, 19, 20,
Sure.
I thought I was smarter than my parents and smarter than these people,
Totally.
smarter than
Same
that.
thing.
You
Same.
know?
Might be time to
Yeah.
say happy birthday. We'll roll out and we'll cut this one, but that was a good show, and I will talk to you next week, and have a good week. All right. See you in a little bit.